love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Oh, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome to SDAQ&A. It's great to have Gillian Ford back with us. How are you, Gillian?
I'm fine, thank you.
That's good. And good to see you again. Wasn't that funny last week when I could see you here, but I couldn't, my face was frozen and I couldn't get back on, and you valiantly just went on yourself and did a great job.
Well, I didn't
do
want
that
to
more
take
often.
too long. I could have talked for an hour, but I didn't.
I
Everybody's relief.
I finally got back in, but So there'd been a bit of dead air for a little while, but that's all right. I can cut that off later. Well, today we are going to be having a replay of that incredible season 2. And Lynn Bartlett, Dr. Lynn Bartlett, is the special guest today. This was season 2, episode 29. And it was a great interview. I really respect and enjoy chatting to Dr. Lynn. I think he did 2 programs in season 2. I think I got him back 2 times, and he may even be watching today and throwing some comments into chat. We'll see how we go. Those listening on the podcast, this will seem like it's 2020 to you if you're following in sequence, which the podcast, Gillian, is only up to about episode 5 or 6 of season 2. So people who only listen to the podcast have no idea that there's 15 other seasons coming. So those listening there, that's a little bit of some insight for what's ahead. There's lots of programs to go, but my voice is coming from 2025, 5 years after this incredible series that we did. And for those that don't know, Gillian and Des were partners in crime, that beautiful married couple. As I said that, I thought I could have chosen some better words right there. And anyway, yeah. So it's great to have you back, Gillian. Whenever I do one of these shows, I like to have Gillian come and commentate. She's going to watch it with me and then afterwards have a bit of a chat. And yeah, just tell us what you've been up to there.
Okay, so this is Des, a paper for Des's master's thesis. It's not huge. Daniel 8 and the latter day, and the grey line is the proof line, and this one is his other PhD. And they come just at the right time, because this one tells you all about the background to Christianity. Oh, I see my camera doing that move.
Yeah, it's good. It looks like you've got a professional crew there.
Yeah, that's right. So he talks about the background of how Christianity came in and how Paul came in. All very useful for what I'm doing on the side.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the moment, I'm just working on an index for 1 chapter.
Yeah.
So far, it's over 40 pages.
Just the index.
Yeah, I'm only going to do it on 1 chapter because
yeah,
it's the one on Rome and Greece. It's got lots of names, and it will help some people to find stuff. But I don't think it's necessary for the other chapters, but it's a grueling task.
It is a big task.
Only I would bother.
Now, I want to give, often I have a sponsor for these shows, and this week I don't, unfortunately. So it's kind of...
So how much does it cost to sponsor?
It's $150.
$150.
So
well, I might sponsor it because I like Lynn.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you, Gillian. And what I was going to do is plug his book at the same time, so we can plug your books and his books. I'll just bring it up on the screen. I'm inadvertently plugging Spectrum magazine as well, because they've got a really great review of the book. Can you see that on the screen? So
I can.
His book is A Boy from Harndorf, The Long Journey Home. And I encourage those watching, you can buy it on Amazon all around the world. Go and grab a copy. So we've got combined sponsors today. Thank you, Gillian. And Gillian, hold up again the book that we're sponsoring today from you. So
this will be without the stripe, and it's got to be proofed, and I'm probably going to do this one.
What's the cover look like, the front cover?
It's the Apostle Paul. I did it, remember, I did it with AI.
Yeah.
And this was one of the good ones. Now, sometimes they come
with... That's an AI picture.
Yep, that's an AI picture.
Incredible, isn't it?
But you have to do about 200 of them. AI is actually not that smart. They end up with like 8 fingers on one hand, or what I put was the Apostle Paul speaks to a crowd and he had a microphone. And when I said no microphone, they got bigger and bigger. It's very funny. And then the other one This is my friend Antiochus Epiphanes the Fourth.
Oh, yes.
I wrote an essay about him, but Des was writing about him in 1958, and he had 3 feet. I had to put a little patch in there. If I was clever, I'd do it better, but nobody will see it. But actually, Milton picked it up. He said, "Why he called him Jake the Peg?" The trials we go to.
The trials, yes. Well,
that's enough for me.
We'll get into it, and we'll remove each other from the program, but we're going back in time to this wonderful interview with Dr. Lynn Bartlett. And thank you, everybody watching. And yes, my voice is almost back. A few people.
That's very good.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a story I could tell. I'll tell it tomorrow of how my big gig went, and when I had no voice. It was quite miraculous. I'll share that story tomorrow. So here we go, back in time. Well, and thank you, everybody. So I'm just chatting while I find the buttons to push. Thank you, everybody, for throwing a few dollars my way. You can do that via paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music, or, as Gillian has just done, sponsor one of these shows. And that really helps as well. Okay, so here we go on this very professional show. The content is amazing. Here is Dr. Lynn Bartlett and Season 2, Episode 29. Welcome to SDAQ&A. It's great to be here today with my very special guest, Dr. Lynn Bartlett. Good to have you here with us, Lynn.
Good to be with you, Peter.
And whereabouts are you at the moment? You mentioned that it's about 11 at night, is it? Did you say?
No, it's 9:15 p.m. on Wednesday night. We're on the East Coast, and so if you start off at New York and go south, you eventually come to North Carolina. Oh. And we're inland from the Atlantic Ocean, which isn't good for an Aussie, because I got to be close to the ocean.
Yeah.
We live in Charlotte, which is Billy Graham territory.
Oh, wow.
And so it's actually a city about the same size as Adelaide, but it's mushroomed in the last 20, 30 years. It's a banking city.
Right.
It used to be the second center of banking in the US, New York, Charlotte, then San Francisco. But Wells Fargo Bank, which is our bank, has taken its headquarters back to San Francisco. But that's what it is. It's a tech banking city.
Wow. Is South Carolina like the next?
It is, and because we're right on
region?
The border,
yeah,
it's about 10 minutes, and we're in South Carolina. Actually, the interesting thing is, you go across the border, and you're in Fort Mill, and Fort Mill is where, and you're such a young child here, Peter. You won't remember this probably, but Tammy and Tammy Faye Baker.
Baker, yeah.
That's where they had their establishment in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Oh no, I was obsessed with
the lady with the eyelashes.
I was obsessed with watching the downfall of that.
Yeah.
I find I'm the kind of person that likes to really dig deep into topics as people are starting to discover. And I remember when that all occurred, I put on them, but also all the televangelists of a certain era. And after a while, you get a really good picture of probably what did go on, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just reading one book.
I actually stayed there. The Columbia Union Conference, Columbia Union College was the union institution, and Columbia Union College, Columbia Union Conference, with its headquarters in Maryland, had a retreat there on one occasion. This was after the Bakers have gone, but it was someplace. It had an indoor mall with a terrestrial corridor that you walk down, you look up and you see the heavens. And there were shops selling clothing and all sorts of things. And I remember going around the side corners of it on one occasion. We were there about 3 or 4 days. And I came to one room, and I was seeing all of these women, and they were all African American women dressed in white with purple hats on. And I stuck my head in the door, and it's one of the most, I'm a male, and I say, you got to be careful of all this sort of stuff. So I stick my head in the door, 500 deaconesses dressed in white with purple hats. I turned around and bid a hasty retreat.
My goodness. It was like a Christian Disneyland, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
A theme park.
And it went bust. He never got it finished.
Where is he now, just out of interest and a side topic?
Well, Timmy Faye died, and I think he's still living, but he's in California, and he's literally selling snake oil now.
Yeah.
He's got all these health medicinal concoctions that he sells over television.
Wow.
And people bid in and buy like that. He's just a con man.
Yeah. A lot of those televangelists like Benny Hinn's, and they're just con men, and they've got a lot to answer for, haven't they?
They have. Yeah.
Just one last aside, a friend of mine, his son plays guitar, and he started a band called the Marcus King Band, and they're in South Carolina, and I'm very good friends with them. So one day I might, if you're in South Carolina, drop in and say hi to them or something. They're lovely people.
It's actually a pretty area. The coastline is very dramatic and sort of romantic. The wispy big oak trees with their, I've forgotten what hangs down there. Anyway, it's very good. Savannah, gorgeous place. Charleston, wonderful. And then you get out into the mountains. We're about 2.5 hours from the mountains, and just beautiful country.
Yeah. Well, you'd really enjoy chatting to them. The son has gone on to be on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, Guitar Player magazine. So any friends that like music, go and check out the Marcus King Band.
Yeah.
Hey, look, tell us a little bit about, before we kind of dig a little into Glacier View, tell us a bit about your family background and your college days, and what you studied, where you studied, that kind of thing, the early years.
Yeah. I'm a South Australian, and the older I get, the more I want to go home.
Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, and I grew up in the Adelaide Hills, and it was the German town of Harndorf, the first German settlement in all of Australia.
Yeah.
And I've actually written a book last year, just republished last month, actually, in Australia, a second publication, and Harndorf features very heavily in it.
It's a beautiful town.
It was populated or founded by old Lutherans, and that's a specific term. These were people that were actually fleeing religious persecution in the 1830s from Prussia. It's quite a story, and so it was a center of Lutheranism, like Kurenbong is a center of Adventism, like Warburton used to be before it was devastated, Wahroonga and so forth, and here in the US, of course, like Berrien Springs or Loma Linda, Tacoma Park, and Cindy, my wife, was born, raised, and educated in Tacoma Park till I dragged her off to Andrews for 6 years, and then we came down here. But I love my time in Harndorf. I grew up on a poultry farm, got involved in brass band music, and then went to Avondale. And I worked for a year, and so I went to Avondale in 1968 in my 20th year. I was 20 in the April, and I loved my 4 years at college. And this is about Glacier View and Desmond Ford. He became my hero.
And what 4 years were they?
68 to 71. I think your dad and mum arrived at the end in 71.
Yeah, no, it was 6. They actually arrived 68, I think, and 69. We left for Fiji in 71.
Oh, I see.
Dad was lecturing there then. Oh, I should know. History, geography, something. Sorry, Dad. But yeah, Des was definitely around then too, wasn't he? At the
Yeah. And I started on theology. And I've never said this before, and I'm only brave enough to say it in my old age, I think. But a few years ago, Roy Naden wrote to me. Um, you know what I mean when I say Roy Naden?
yes, yeah,
Roy was retired in Washington State, out from Seattle, and he had picked up from the Australian chatterbox, the news service, probably Facebook, certainly the internet, that Val Box had died. Gordon Box's wife had died, and I had made some comment on one of the links that it was wonderful to be able to have Val Box come to Lilydale Academy and worship and bring her grandchildren in the 80s at some stage. And he reached out and said, you know, we don't know each other. Well, I knew him. And he and I had a marvelous email communication for about 6 or 7 months, and then it went cold. And a month or two after that, I heard he'd died.
Wow.
But he asked me the question, you know, why didn't you continue with ministry? And it's because of ingathering. I detested ingathering. Ingathering mortified my entire soul. And I would go into Newcastle, and you'd go up into these apartment places, and every door was slammed in my face.
Yeah.
I head up to Tenterfield Way onto the border another year with Peter Rampton, actually. The two of us went up there, and I'd go onto farms, and they'd throw me out, literally. And and I'm, you know, I'm supposed to be looking for a soul here, but it's really a donation. Well, it cost us more money than we brought back. And I changed from theology to education.
Wow.
And so that's where I finished.
That interesting. Based on that.
I mean, I can say it now, but
yeah,
I couldn't have said it 20 years ago, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I used to get a bit scared. You know, they'd send us young pathfinders out, and we would have only been I would have only been maybe 10. And we'd be knocking on doors, and the Pathfinder counsellor would be the adult, and he'd be at the corner of the street, and 5 or 6 of us would be sent door to door. So they were keeping an eye on us. But dogs would chase us, and people would swear at us. It was terrible.
Yeah, well, you understand. Yeah. Well, another Theo student at that same time with a similar name to me, Lynn Burton, and he and I are still in touch. He used to be petrified of dogs that would come after him, but he stayed in the ministry in the theology course. Anyway, Avondale was wonderful for me.
Yeah.
I actually made a few notes, and Dr. McDowell, what an amazing man. I got to know him after I came back to Avondale as administrator, mid-89 to the end of 93. And he had heard that I'd gone to a state university, research university, rather than Andrews or Loma Linda. And he was full of questions. And I knew that he had gone to Columbia University at the late 40s, after the war, into the early 50s. But he told me a fascinating story. And most of us don't probably realize just how talented that guy was. You know, he would lose his temper every so often, and so forth. But when he finished at Columbia University, he told me that he was offered the first foundation presidency in the Ford Foundation. They were setting it up at that particular time, and he was offered that job. I mean, that is huge.
Incredible.
It is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
But he came back and finished his career down at Wahroonga, where he and his wife would open their house for people who had folk in the hospital in need of accommodation. Just an amazing guy.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And Alwyn Salem, he married me, and he's the first guy I can remember ever thinking of, because my dad and he went to college together in the 40s. Dad was about 4 years older than him, I think, and he was in essential services, which meant he didn't put on a uniform. He was in the railway. I can say that here, can't I, to an Australian audience. but he was a big person in my mind too. Heffron, Jorgensen, Jorgie, retired in Victoria and would come up and take Vespers at Lilydale sometime. And
Yeah.
I remember him saying in our first year of theology class, "I got to look after you boys because you're going to sign my resuscitation checks." Oh, we loved him. Then, Magnuson, Draper, Thompson, all the science boys. Alan Thrift. Probably the guy that had the biggest impact on me was Boss Irvine.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I worked on the dairy. I was the head dairy boy and the main tractor driver. Mrs. Walker in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Clem Moss and myself washed dishes in our first year, and both argued it kept us humble for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
Aileen Heiss was there. The maiden name wasn't Heiss in those days. Her name wasn't Heiss then, and I remember her throwing wet mops at Clem Moss and myself at various times. Brian Townend, Noel Clapham, Morris Kennedy, Russell Crans,
Yeah.
Pastor and Mrs. Rice,
Yeah.
Don Bain, of course, Colin Standish, and I'll mention him later on, the Lindsays in my last year, and Dot Cottier. I was home in 2018 in November, and John Schultz took me around to see Dot, still working in the, what do they call the welfare services
The
there?
community centre.
There we are, the community centre. And at 94 years of age, she just about hugged the breath out of me.
Yes, she's got a very strong hug.
What a marvellous time.
She lives just down the road here.
Yeah.
And I'd count her as one of my very best friends. She's just such a gem.
An amazing woman.
I'm trying to get her to do an interview with me because she knows it all.
She knows it. She knows the history, Peter. There's no question.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I loved Avondale. These were Trevor Lloyd. I didn't mention him. He's on my list here.
Yes.
Great guy. Yeah.
I tell you what, you mentioned before we came live that you were looking at gathering some information with yourself and Arthur Patrick about a lot of this topic, and I actually didn't say at the time, but I thought, wow, imagine you, Arthur Patrick, and Trevor Lloyd in a room together. You'd be able to really dig deep.
We were never. Trevor was involved to a certain extent, but I don't think he thought I was going to pull it off, and just said, perhaps he won't be part of it. But Arthur stayed with me, and as I said to you before, at one stage I had the money but not the time. Then I had the time but not the money, and so it never got done.
Yeah.
It's similar to what you're doing, so we'll talk later.
Yeah, well, for sure. Tell us a little bit more of your impressions of Des at college.
Well, without being sacrilegious, never a man spake like Des. I'm not going to church on a consistent basis now. Dabbled with Baptists for a couple of years and then sort of said, no, not there. But the church here is dead. You go in and shake a hand and it's like a wet fish, and hasn't changed in 50 years. I found somebody else who's as close to Des as I can find. And this is on YouTube. It's Timothy Keller,
right,
out of Manhattan. And he's 70, just finished 29 years of ministry in the Redeemer Church. And he stepped outside to do pastoral training and other services work for the community. They're big into poverty. They're big into homelessness. And
I love when people put the pastoral care into action.
What's that?
I love when people put the pastoral theology into action and pastoral care.
And I'm going to say a bit later on, I think that's the problem with Adventism today.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a real, it's not clear of its real mission.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was at college, 60s, the 70s, the 50s, Adventism, and I'm largely talking North American division and South Pacific division, Australasian division as it was then, we knew our mission. It was stop smoking. It was alcohol prevention. Ernie Steed and the Alert magazine. I mean, what a go-getter was Ernie Steed. And then we had the introduction of television coming in, and you had Faith for Today, is that right? Out of New York City, and then George Vanderman over in Thousand Oaks. We knew what was going on, and then the biggest driving force of all, I think, for Adventism in the South Pacific as well as NAD was the mission field.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to educate folk, we had to build schools, we had to build hospitals, we had to build colleges, and we did that. You know, the most impressive, and I spent 6 years traveling the world of Adventism while I was at Andrews, and the most impressive university, including those in the US, is found in South Korea, is found in Seoul. Beautiful buildings. The government gave the land, and the university was built there, Samyuk University. And then an interesting apocryphal story goes after this. In the late 1950s, the government came back to the Adventist Church again and said, we would like you to build a hospital too. The church turned it down. They built their own, but the church turned that down. Reason? Christ will be here before then. The second coming will happen before then. So a missed opportunity. But that kept us busy in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
There was a real sense of
now,
purpose and meaning, wasn't there?
What's that?
There was a real sense of purpose and meaning from what I gather.
And young people were involved. You know, there was even street preaching in the 70s, and it was a good time to be an Adventist, really. We forgot to, we've been so preoccupied entertaining the youth today. Yeah. Not involving them.
Yeah.
You can run these one projects and all the rest of it, but unless you involve them, they're going to go somewhere else. It's the old story. Teach a person to fish, and you teach him how to live, you know.
And I think for my generation, we came along observing a lot of the guys in the 70s doing their street preaching and their music, and you know, your Bob Wolfgrams and Lowell Tarlings and Genelevich and Sally Hilder and Smiley Martin and Rick Foray and all these guys were out there doing it, and we thought, awesome, it's going to be great. But then as we came onto the landscape, that's when all the pastors left, and so ever since then it's changed, and so much energy over the last 40 years has been put into tension between the left and right in the church, instead of, they're kind of hobbling each other in a way, aren't they?
It's a crying shame.
Yeah. Imagine if Des had stayed, if all those pastors had stayed. So what if there's a bit of left and right and a bit of biffo and a bit of theological dispute? The creativity, the energy, the passion that they would have brought into the church. Wow, what a loss.
And for me to listen to some of the folk you've interviewed, it breaks your heart to listen to their stories.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it does. I respect a lot of the work that Gordon Hammond's doing, where he's reaching out to these guys that had been...
He's the very person I was thinking of, and I adore Gordon and Sally. I mean, Sally, what they have done.
Yeah.
He went to Wesley Mission for 20-odd years, I think, and then went off on their own into this cruising with cooking and photography. And Gordon is only this evening, actually, half an hour before I connected with you. He's put up another photo, not in the Tibet area, but this one's in Vietnam. What a wonderful photographer!
I know, incredible. And look, to be fair to the mission outreach of a lot of young people in the last 40 years, there have been incredible pockets of activity. I know around the North New South Wales conference here, there's been young people really doing incredible things and incredible outreach things and helping community. And so I think you and I are referring more to the support that was given to the young people from on high, perhaps more from the administration kind of level. That backup support's not there.
I think it's, for me, Peter, it's probably more than that, because I'm not heavily involved in what's happening at home in the church, but I know a certain amount, and Australia and New Zealand are very fortunate within Adventism to have the school systems they've got, and to have the young people, children ministry. Let's get that one first, children, and then the youth teenagers. And I think it's a smaller pool than here in North America. I mean, I mentioned the Columbia Union Conference, which includes New York. Let me see if I can do this. New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia, and Ohio. Better not leave out Ohio. But I mean, that geographical section has considerably more Adventists, almost twice as many Adventists as what the Australasian Conference. What do we call it now? The Australian Conference, Union Conference.
Yeah, I think it's the Australian Union Conference. Yeah, the AUC. Yeah,
there are almost twice as many Adventists just in that alone. But otherwise, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot going. The school system's not going real well, probably declining. And there's a youth event that meets every number of years at Oshkosh in Wisconsin. Oshkosh is where they have fly-ins for aviation as well. It's a huge thing. But I read a report a little while ago that more Adventist young people were at this Oshkosh youth camp than are in all the school system in the North American division.
Wow.
And, it's a shame.
And I think you find, like you mentioned, the One Project, they were a sanctioned ministry, part of the union or conference that they were in, and they had, the exact words of one of their founders was that they were under tremendous pressure to not proceed the way they were proceeding, and so they eventually had to kind of go independent. So I think that the leadership needs to kind of respond and kind of, instead of trying to put out spot fires with all the tensions, to start encouraging a little bit more some of the potential that's there.
Well,
I mean, they shut down, One Project. Well, shut down. They were no longer making it official because of, alleged, emergent church practices and spiritual formation and just tag words that mean nothing when all they're doing is wanting to connect and have a more of a spiritual experience.
And I'm going to say something now that can be misconstrued, but I'm old enough now and far enough away to be able to say this. I think somebody needs to stand up. I mean, what can you do?
Yeah.
If you go ahead anyway, what can they do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's the crying shame in the world today. There's no leadership.
Well said. There's lots of very. Go ahead. There's lots of
said, where you look.
Yeah, there's lots of very conservative leadership, but there doesn't appear to be that liberal kind of. Dan Jackson seemed to be making a bit of a stand, but he's retiring now, isn't he?
Yeah, he did last week.
Was it? I loved his hooey comment that he said. Did you follow a bit of that at all?
Oh, not really. I read Spectrum, I glance Adventist Today, I'll look at a few papers once in a while. I can tell you this, last year in a report, the North American Division treasurer made the comment, they spend $143 million to operate the North American Division. Now, I can't break that down into exactly what that means, but it was listed as being $143 million to operate the North American Division. That's a lot of money. And COVID-19 has shut down the air travel now. And Adventists travel more than just about any other denomination or any other group of religion, with the exception of the Roman Curia. Because the Roman Curia is the business.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a business that's bigger than most countries.
Well, hopefully after COVID, they'll continue their meetings on Zoom.
And, sorry?
I was going to say, hopefully after COVID, they'll continue their meetings on Zoom and save money. Hey, just back into kind of the Glacier view. theme, I came across an interesting, and it might have even been coined by you, I don't know, but GROF, the GROF, the getting rid of Ford, little, what do you call those? Like an anagram. Did you have personal knowledge of the GROF movement, the getting rid of Ford, and the CBs in Australia?
Personal knowledge?
Yeah,
Oh, I lived through it.
yeah.
Is Groff a name? I don't know that.
It's kind of a what is it, an acronym? Is that what they call them? So
Acronym?
GROF. It's kind of a
I have
fun one for
heard that.
for getting rid of Ford.
Look, Peter. My first appointment after Avondale was Auckland, and I stayed there 1 year, and I came back. The best thing about my year in Auckland was getting to know Dennis and Diane Ryan, Russell and Lauren Woolley better. Didn't really enjoy that year, my fault more than anything else. Then I came to Lilydale Academy. Now, I said that I left the ministry, but I left Avondale College with an education degree, and Barry Crabtree was our Dean of Men at that time. There was Glenn Roberts, Clive Butcher, and myself with the assistant deans in Watson Hall that particular year. And Barry and I used to talk about youth work because that's what I was interested in. And he said, I'm not going to forget that. So I landed at Lilydale, and I landed right in the middle of the biggest amount of youth work I could ever wish to find in my life. And I had 11 years there, and they were great years. But they were years when the perfection movement was alive and well. And an interesting thing, Colin and Rachel Standish's father and stepmother actually attended the Croydon Church, which was just a few miles away. And so they would appear once in a while. But I can remember a number of things to do with the perfection movement. I thought I might just, if I can, just mention a couple of things. I taught English, I taught history, I taught Bible. And I can remember I taught 1 year, grade 8, year 8 English. And I was teaching Kenneth Graham's Wind in the Willows. Well, a delightful story, but it has animals that talk. Yeah. And there was a woman who objected to that and spoke to me. And then on one occasion actually came to the classroom door while I was about to go in the middle of the day, which never happened to me again, but it did on this particular occasion. She was lampooning me for still teaching her daughter this story, this novel, this fictional novel with animals that talked. Now she was a perfectionist person, and the aim was to reach sinless perfection before Jesus comes. And she went on and on and on, and I had to get into the classroom, and I can remember abruptly cutting her off as politely as I could. And I can remember saying, "Now look, Mrs." I said, "I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do the best of having those students learn some English literature. It may not be the literature you like, but I want to ask you a question. Your daughter's been standing there alongside of you all the time and she's holding a teddy bear. Are you going to take that away from her because she's talking to that teddy bear?" I went in and taught the class. I won't say any more. There is another part of the story because she got herself into trouble at another time. There was another guy, I truly can't remember his name, but his name was Lance, and he was a father who had kids, and he came up and took a Sabbath afternoon meeting on one occasion. And I was the sports master, I was the afternoon meeting coordinator, and I taught in the classroom, and then I was in the dorm one night a week, every Wednesday, all day Wednesday, I should say, and then on duty one weekend in 3, from Friday afternoon through until Sunday night. We were busy. We were really busy in those days. And this guy came And I can remember we're all sitting in the chapel, which is the upstairs building at Lilydale, and he had several tables up the front, and he had all these Ellen White books lined out, and he had markers in them and pages in them and so forth. And he gave a very erudite rundown on Spirit of Prophecy and the role of Ellen White in helping her people, God's people, achieve sinless perfection. A few weeks later, one of the boarding students went to this guy's place for the weekend because there was a child who invited the boarder to the weekend. And the kid came back and came up to me one afternoon when the boys, the boarding students, men and women, young men and women, would work in the afternoon from 4 to 5. And I said, I don't get this, man. He said, he's up there preaching to us. And he said, I go into his toilet and he's got a stack of Playboy magazines. And of course, this person who's about 15 years of age, we had a talk about humans, adults can let you down very, very much on many occasions. There was another young boarding student from PMG who came under the influence of a number of one or two of our teachers that had perfectionist leanings. And I'm deputy principal at this particular time, so this had to be 75. And I live at the front house to the front gate. And I just happened to see him walking out with his suitcase one day out to the main road. And I went out and asked him where he was going. And he had tears in his eyes. He's a 16, 17-year-old young man at this stage. And he's so upset that he couldn't see himself ever reaching perfection. So he had no alternative but to leave. Well, we talked him into it and he stayed and he finished and he went to Avondale and he contacted me a couple of years ago. His wife has passed and he's doing what he can, still with some of these tendencies, I might add. And that's okay. We are different and there's room for all of us. So I was in the thick of that. Bob Parr was the editor of the Signs of the Times at that particular time in the Record. Would come down and take evening meetings, loved it. I had wonderful colleagues, John Nichols and Murray Oliver. Pam and Murray Oliver lived there in Kirrinbong. Wonderful colleagues. S.M. Utley was the president of the union. Clive Barrett, Wendy Burris's father. Just wonderful people. The Crabtrees moved down there, and Barry approached me and said, you want to come into youth work? I said, I've got as much youth work as I can handle right now. I'm going to stay in education. And so that was it. And then in 78, I went to Andrews, Peter. And and of course, Des came on one occasion, and the place was a pack out, the seminary chapel. And
is this the PUC?
No, this is Andrews. No, this is 1978.
Oh.
PUC is 1979.
Yes.
In October.
Okay, I didn't.
Oh, no. I know where you're going.
Yeah. No, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah. But I've forced you to do that. I'm at Andrews in 1978. Des came to Andrews to speak, but he came from PUC.
Right.
In other words, they went in 1977, 78, 79, in the October was the PUC meeting.
Yes, yeah.
Right? Yeah. I had that. I was saying that as if he had come from Avondale to PUC. And again, marvellous preaching. The gospel sings through, clear as can be, warms people's hearts, gives them hope of salvation, and just makes them feel as though there's something to this notion of following Christ to the end of your days. One interesting occasion, George Knight was there. He was in his second year, and you're going to talk to him in the next day or so.
Yeah.
I think I was the first Australian that he actually taught. Kerry Hortop was an Australian pastor at that particular time, and he was finishing his MDiv. And Kerry invited me one night to go and hear Mervyn Maxwell. Now, there's a whole bunch of Maxwells. And Mervyn was the church history guy at Andrews. And Mervyn had this view of salvation that was different to the traditional view, to the Des view. He tended to incorporate the a little bit of the idea of the moral influence theory, if you know what I mean when I say that, the Orland theory. And we went along, and there were probably 50 students in that room, MDiv students by and large. I was the MA Ed admin student, and Mervyn got into these guys, and he really took after them. And then at the end, some of the students themselves replied back. But things were hot there at Andrews too at that particular time.
Yeah. What was he kind of saying? What was the content that he was kind of getting into them on?
Well, he was virtually suggesting that they needed to become traditional Adventists, and he was suggesting that Desmond Ford was heading more towards antinomianism. Once saved, you can do what you like and all that. Well, that's never what Des Ford said.
No.
You're justified by faith, and the minute that happens, sanctification begins, but it's the work of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy how people
letting down and doing what you like because you're saved. Now, here's a point, Peter. I witnessed a number of people in the Victorian area that let go of traditional Adventism, and when they grasped hold of the gospel, and of course Des was given the credit for it, but in Victoria you've got a number of people that are preaching the same message. Jim Johansson was a guy, and he died too young, but he was a guy who was heavily into the gospel at that particular time. And Barry Crabtree and some of these other individuals were preaching this. And there was one family just down the road from the academy, wonderful, wonderful family, who actually gave up traditional Adventism and said they also gave up the Sabbath at that particular time, and had to learn how to do other things on the Sabbath, and had to learn to eat meat. And I can remember saying to the wife, and she's in her 50s and I'm not, I'm in my 20s, who said you have to learn to eat meat? They actually went to the movies on Friday night. This was their newfound freedom in Christ.
Yeah.
And so it was the traditional approach, the gospel approach, which they took to excess. They ended up moving to Western Australia. After that, there are some sad stories. So I was in the thick of that perfection era, and then of course I come back to Victoria in '79, and I didn't go straight to Lilydale. I went to Hawthorne for a year, and we went to the Mont Albert Church. Now, when I was at Andrews, in the bookstore, I would sell books for 15 hours a week just to try and help keep bread on the table. And I had Fritz Guy and Ivan Blazin and Jim Cox and, all of these guys come in, and I would order their books for their students. And I ordered literature as well as history and so forth. And so I'm at Mont Albert Church, and I just want to tell this story quickly because this is meaningful to me. And I learned that there was the widow of Lewis Weir. Now, Louis Weir was a New Zealander. I think he died in the 60s, and I'm now talking 1979. And I went up to her one day, or somebody introduced me to her, that's what it was, in the first Sabbath or second we were there. And I can remember saying, Mrs. Weir, I'm pleased to meet you. I want to tell you I was selling your husband's books at Andrews last year. And he was ahead of his time. And in the South Pacific Division, or he New Zealand born, but he spent a lot of time in Adelaide. And under Walter Scragg's father.
Wow.
And he had trouble with Armageddon, the concept of Armageddon, the King of the North and so forth, when the rest of traditional Adventism was still accepting them. And so he ended up being defrocked, and then they eventually tried to bring him back, but he wouldn't go back. And he kept working as an active layman. Anyway, he wrote a bunch of books. You can still get them. And I'm telling her that we were selling them at Andrews for the seminary students. She burst into tears. and I'm feeling it now. And she said, "You mean to tell me my husband's life was worthwhile after all?"
Oh, wow.
See, the church is an organization. It's wonderful, and many of the folk you've interviewed have been extolling the virtues of the church, but it can be mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Wow.
can be heartless.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
That's a powerful story, Lynn, and I think I'm glad you've shared that, because many people in the interviews have mentioned his influence, and to think that she just never even realized that herself.
no,
Again, another tragic loss.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Um, After the next year, I go to Lilydale. This is 1980, and I'm a principal and business manager and stay there for 6 years. And of course, Glacier View happens in the August.
Mm.
And so we knew Des was off writing his document. Tapes were going back and forth. And here's an interesting parallel. The area that I love most in life, and would have done, except the brethren asked me, would I go and do administration, is Renaissance and Reformation history. And I've soaked myself in that over the years. I taught it in year 12 in Victoria. And it's a much more comprehensive course that we taught than seminary students at Andrews or any seminary in the world would actually take, because they'd take it for just one semester. But you've got students that are studying this for 10 months. And so I actually, when I was in the bookstore, I asked Fritz Guy a question once. I said, I really have, and I said, you're a church historian, you're teaching this course now in the seminary. I said, I've got a question. Sure, he said, to ask it. I said, I'm having trouble understanding nominalism. He couldn't answer it. I'm not knocking him, but it just told me that once you get to a certain level, you specialize.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do an aeroplane sweep over the whole area of European history, 1300, 1600. And that was it. But anyway, I learned that people specialize at that particular time.
They specialize, and in doing so, they kind of become a little bit narrow.
Yes,
in their outlook.
Yeah. And that's okay, because if he was teaching in the US undergraduate Renaissance or Reformation, he'd be expected to know more of the details. You know, I'm accustomed to rattling off dates and names and kings and queens and reformers and heretics and so forth. I'm getting a little rusty on it now because I don't do much of it, but that's what I was accustomed to doing.
Mm.
But in 1980, cassettes are flying everywhere. And the interesting thing is, the Reformation with Luther was so successful because of the printing press, Gutenberg's printing press, 1453. So all of a sudden, documents from Luther are the most popular sales item coming off any press, anywhere, whether it's in Germany and in the Netherlands, France, or wherever. And with Des, it's tapes. I've still got a box of them, not sure what to do with them. But there was a heightened sense of anticipation, wasn't there, as you think back on that?
It's interesting to where you marry that technology with information and a defining moment. If they can intersect, powerful things happen, and that's kind of what's happening these days with social media too.
Right.
So you were feeling this sense of anticipation yourself and quite excited about what could come and the positive changes. Is that what you mean?
Yes, we all were. And then, of course, Paxton writes his book, you know, the Anglican theologian, and there are meetings held here, there, everywhere. And if Paxton came to Melbourne, I couldn't go and attend because I had something else on, and because I get paid to go to that meeting, I couldn't make it. But the activity was heightened. The anticipation was palpable, and we were expecting good things. Our hero had finally said he was going to give account. You know, he wasn't the first. David Sibley's been mentioned a couple of times. David Sibley was my great uncle.
Wow.
Grew up in Broken Hill, the first person in Adventism to use radio And he used that in Melbourne in 1927, which the
Wow.
Maxwells don't like in California, but never mind. We'll cross on. And,
He
and
was ahead
David
of his
actually
time.
said to Des, when Des came back from his doctorate at Michigan State in Lansing, and he takes over the chair of the theology department at Avondale. Des, if I've got this story right, virtually says, well, I've got these concerns. And David Sibley had spoken to him about them before. And Des had run into these when he was in the seminary in Tacoma Park. You see, Andrews was not the seminary until 1960.
Mm.
And I can remember Ruth Murdoch, who was the wife of W.J. Murdoch, left as dean of the seminary in Tacoma Park and went up as dean of the seminary at Andrews. So there are a whole bunch of people, F.D. Nicol, Harry Lowe, and a bunch of these guys. I've got some of their books.
Mm.
They had the same concerns as Des.
Mm.
So David Sibley says to him, tell the boys about it. Talk to the boys about it. And of course, that gets you into the CBs, doesn't it?
Mm.
In the midst of perfectionism.
Mm.
And you've got the aging evangelists who don't like to be replaced. They want to do the camp meetings,
Yeah.
the Sabbath camp meeting, the evening camp meetings. And Des is the one who's taking the glory away from them.
Mm.
So enmity came up there, you know. It's the enmity in heaven sort of thing. It's the enmity in the South Pacific Division.
How
And while L.C. Naden was president and R.R. Frame was president, things were okay. But they were gaining such power and such traction, the aging evangelists, and the CB. And by the way, there were twins at Avondale when I was there. Jill was there too, with the Dabson boys, and their father was a mischievous Scotchman.
Interesting.
And he said to a group of us in Victoria on one occasion, oh, he said the CBs, he said they're more like members of the SS to me. And we said, what do you mean SS? He said senile snipers. And we laughed, you know, you got to have fun in this. And we laughed.
Yeah.
And but I was in the right part of the world. I was in Victoria. And Lilydale was a union school, the Trans-Australia Union Conference School. Claude Judd was the union president. Clive Barrett was the conference president, and then Ken Lowe. And so I was okay. Had I been in Western Australia like Gordon, probably a different story. Had I been in the other union under the Ayatollah, different story. One of my dear friends, who's a bit older than me, but his wife was chewed out by Athol on one occasion because she took her 2 kids to the movies. And that wasn't done. But I can remember many times talking to Pastor Judd, who's just turned 100, by the way.
Really?
And and his son put up a photo of them the other day, and they're still going strong.
Wow.
He was my mentor. He was a man who was very, very wise.
Yeah.
And was a good, caring leader. It was S.M. Utley before that, and then he took over. Both caring, good men. Anyway, so Glacier View takes place. I didn't go, but many American friends that I've met subsequently were there. I've spoken with them. A lot of the theologians wished that Des had not spoken up at PUC, had not gone on and written his huge document, which most of them didn't read, including the theologians who went. And, you know, it was a disaster waiting to happen, and it did. The saddest story out of Glacier View is a friend I met in about 2011 when I went to Andrews. He was a teacher out on the West Coast, a Bible teacher, and he was at Glacier View. And he says, I don't think Jill's going to mind me saying this. I've actually told her a little bit about it, but on the Friday afternoon, so you've got the consensus statement, the 10-point statement on the Friday afternoon, and it was basically declared over. And Jill was crying. Now, I think she said she was crying in the morning, so whether it was the morning or the afternoon, I don't know. But this man, his last name was Chamberlain, said the saddest thing that broke his heart was to see Mrs. Ford crying.
Wow.
You know, he said, how can a church do this?
Yes.
And Ted and his wife went into nursing homes after that. And then he discovered a hobby that he's had for a dozen years. You'll laugh at this. Over here in the US, people do reenactments of Civil War battles and so forth. And he discovered a General Chamberlain in the Union Army. And so I've been to county fairs, I've been to historical association groups, I've been at other people's homes where he and Faye, and Cindy's been with me, they'll come in period costume. She'll have this beautiful 19th century dress on, a bonnet on, and he'll be in his general's uniform with his hat, his gloves, the works. And they spend months of the year doing this.
Oh, I love it.
And
he can claim the name Chamberlain authentically too.
Here's a little aside, Peter. I found a General Bartlett too. And so I said to Ted, if I stay in Michigan, Ted, I'm going to join you, mate.
I love one of the things I wish often that I lived in the States, because of, if you have a passion for a hobby, there's thousands of other people that share it, and they gather together for conventions. And hey, we interviewed, I'm not sure if you got to see it yesterday, with Richard Coffin, and he was there.
I saw most of it.
He was there as a scholar and an academic. It was fascinating. He would talk about the morning meetings, and he did an assessment that he's guessing around the 69% were more admin, political focused. He got a real sense that, we were here to get rid of Des, and the morning small group meetings, he said, were all headed by the more political admin-oriented people in every group, and he listed each of the names in each of the small groups. So it was kind of a fate. The fate had already been decided in many ways. And when Neil Wilson noticed Des's willingness to compromise on the 20-point document, he's fast approaching Salem and Norm Young and these guys, and manipulating them in a way to write a deeper 10-point plan that he knew Des wouldn't be able to in all conscience agree with. Right. And they kind of were thrown under the bus a little bit. What are your thoughts on that kind of political maneuvering, and do you think, are you surprised that there was already almost the players had been put into place to ensure that there was no victory for Des?
No, I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised back then when I was at Lilydale and we were getting reports. The first person I spoke to after the team returned to the South Pacific Division, actually it was still the Australasian Division, because it doesn't become the South Pacific until 1985. I think I'm right on that. But the first person I spoke to was Claude Judd, and we went through a number of these areas. I wasn't surprised, Peter, and maybe we can spend a little bit of time talking about this at the end, because while Renaissance Reformation history, 19th and 20th century history, are my passion, I was asked by the brethren to study administration, management, and so forth. So I go to Andrews to do that. And then we had a lot of success in Lilydale in that 1980 to 85 period. And it had a lot to do with some of the great faculty I had with me. Lynn Burton, Maury Krieg, Russell Stanley were the Bible teachers at that particular time. And these are exceptional people. And teachers don't have time to do a lot of writing for church magazines unless it's really a passion they have, because they're teaching the kids every darn day, And the bottom line is, these are young minds that are growing into Adventism or growing out of it during those years. And David McClintock is the current education director you've got in the South Pacific Division. David's first job was with me at Lilydale in 1980. And what an exceptional Bible teacher. He has specialized in teaching Bible. And the South Pacific Division can be very, very proud of the good work they have accomplished in curriculum. North America borrows the curriculum from the South Pacific Division because it's such cutting edge.
Mm.
And so you've got young people that are growing into the church or out during this particular time. And our hero, we made Des our hero. We probably shouldn't have, but it's a bigger pool. I think I heard you or somebody else say in another interview, the South Pacific Division is a small entity. You know, Australia has less than one union in membership in the US. The Community Conference has twice the number. That's just one. The biggest one is Southeastern Conference, Pacific Union, I should say. And so this happened. But so I'm studying, when I go to the University of Maryland, I'm studying in-depth management, adult education and higher education. I want to study adult development and adult education because many of the boarding students' kids were the ones that I became interested in. You know, why do adults have problems? What do they need to lead a healthy life and so forth? And I ended up specializing in retirees, and here I am, one of them now. And so I was studying all of this. I'm not surprised because whenever an organization gets into trouble and it has to reform, what does it do? It pulls its belt in. And so that's what it did. It tightened its belt. The seminary was reduced. Gerhard Hasel was a tough dean, a hardliner. Years later came to me at Community College and wanted to know if I'd give his son a job. Well, Michael's teaching at Southern Adventist University now. But they were tough years, and the church lost a lot. You know, here it didn't lose the same number of personnel in the workforce, but it lost morale. And the air was sucked out of it.
Yeah. At the time, do you think that, like, I think retrospectively, now that Ted Wilson's in power, now that the in many ways the Concerned Brethren could claim a victory, you could look back and say it was a triumph. At the time, did they sort of claim it as being a triumph, getting rid of Ford?
Well, I mean, I can't give an answer, an authoritative answer on that because it's too big. The North American division is too big. Neil Wilson was my next door neighbour.
Oh, really?
5 years. So when I go back to the US the second time,
wow,
after my Avondale experience in mid-89 to end of 93, I buy Bob Spangler's home, who was the editor of the Ministry magazine, and Neil Wilson is right next door. And so this is 1994 through to even into early 1999.
Wow.
He and I spent a lot of time raking leaves together and shoveling snow and talking.
Wow.
Now I stopped there and say, he talked, I listened. But it was fascinating. I like him.
Yeah.
And I saw him just before he died, and he was still asking me, how are you and Cindy doing?
Yeah.
We bumped into them a couple of years before that in Nordstrom's. Nordstrom's the equivalent of David Jones or something like some store like this, I think. And Cindy knew them because Ted and Cindy were in school together. He was a couple of years ahead of her. We went over and said hello to them, and she was trying. Mrs. Wilson, Eleanor, was trying a new dress, and he actually thanked us for coming over and saying hello. A lot of these guys are lonely, you know, but Neil Wilson was shrewd. I say oftentimes 1980 Glacier View was when the South Pacific Division grew up. It came of age because of that traumatic crisis. Probably the North American Division came of age with the Mary Kay Silver case, when this woman in the Pacific Press said, I want more money.
Yeah.
That lingered on for a long time.
Yeah.
And linked with that is also the push for the health institutions to get higher money, higher pay for their administrators, and that happened in the early 70s. And so that's when the North America, in my opinion, woke up, looking at it from an administrative point of view.
Yes,
Things were different. The South Pacific Division, I think it could have been Glacier View. And so he knew he had a problem to solve, because it was Bob Brimsmead before Des, and I was shocked. I think Gordon put up a week or two ago a statement saying the three influential leaders, and influencers, I should say, in Adventism in modern times was Ellen White, well, duh, of course, as far as writers and influence and all of that. I think Maxwell was next, and Bob Brimsmead was third. I just about dropped off my chair, the chair I'm sitting in now, when I read that. Bob Brimsmead? But that's what it said. And it came, I think as I looked at the document Gordon posted, I think it was from the year 2000. It was a review. Bill Johnson was the editor at that particular time. I did not realise Bob Brimsmead had such a huge influence.
Yeah. A lot of people have said that to me, actually, in doing these interviews.
And so you have Brimsmead, and then you have the gospel coming in with Des, and then Brimsmead gets on board with that too. That was taking off, and all of a sudden, you've got the administrators, Neil Wilson, Parmenter Taylor from our part of the world, and others. I mean, Herb Douglas was right in the thick of this. Kenneth Wood was right in the thick of this too. What do we do with this individual? Adventism is going to change, because Des Ford was essentially saying 1844 isn't biblical. And you see, if you jettison that, all of Adventism goes down the tubes.
As you're putting into question Ellen White then.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The sanctuary and the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So it was a no-brainer in many respects. I asked Neil, after we'd gotten to know each other really well, I asked him one day, I said, do you have any regrets in the time you were GC president? And he said two things.
Wow.
Blew me away.
Yeah.
One was Harris Pines, because they lost the Harris Pines mill. That was an Oregon timber company.
I tell you what, that's a fascinating story, that one.
What's that?
That's a fascinating story, that one.
It is.
We haven't touched on that in the series yet, but I want to that and Davenport I want to chat about one day in depth.
Well, I've got a person.
Give us a little bit of an insight for those that don't know about it.
Yeah. I've got a person you should interview if that's the case, so we can talk later. But Neil Wilson said about Harris Pines, he said, I thought I had the right person, the right people in charge. And at Glacier View, he said to me, now he knew I was an Australian. He knew my age and stage, and he's no dummy. He's a shrewd man. But he said to me, I was looking for a better outcome. Well, if you're looking for a better outcome, you should set the conference up in a better structure with clear goals and aims for outcomes you hope to achieve. They had to fire Des, because Adventism was under fire. Now, maybe I'm a bit extreme in that, but that's basically where I've come to.
Yeah, I think Adventism as they knew it was definitely under threat.
Yes.
If you were wanting to follow the thread that comes post Question on Doctrine, where the church is wanting to present itself as more evangelical to the rest of the world, then maybe there's grounds to say there was a new. I say that's when the church divided into two paths, and so one path was certainly under threat, but this other part could have grown into something very meaningful.
Yes.
So I can see why. In fact, I'm wanting you to dig a little bit deeper into the Neil Wilson, Keith Parmenter, Athol Tolhurst, Colin Standish personalities, because I can fully see it. If I had a rock band and all of a sudden I've got a country lead guitarist that's in there and it's working and it's okay, but then the fiddle player wants to join and pretty soon the rock band's starting to look like a bluegrass band, I could feel under threat. It might morph into something even more interesting, but I can see why they were concerned for sure. I wouldn't have kind of put my hand up to defend what they were concerned about. But if you're wanting to keep Adventism as it was continuing, I can see why they were speaking up so boldly.
Right.
But
Sorry.
but I also lament the loss of something new that really could have been. Can you share a little bit more on those four names that I mentioned and how you? Because it's fascinating. You live next door to Neil. What insights you would have gained from? Because
Well,
even though he wanted a different outcome, he kind of hounded poor Jill and Des, trying to get rid of their membership for years.
I think, and this is conjecture, but I tend to think, had there been different leadership in the South Pacific Division, Glacier View may not have happened.
Yeah.
That's one point. The second point, Neil was a smart guy. He was the consummate politician in many respects, but he didn't understand management and leadership as you would need to understand it to run corporations today. That's not his problem. It's just that we didn't come into this area. But there are two weaknesses in the church, and Adventism, in my opinion, is the last bastion of male chauvinism. How about that?
Yeah, I agree.
But its days are numbered. You know, when I first started in administration in the mid-70s, it was a man's world. At Andrews, and I was there from 2011 to the end of 2016, women administrators all over the place, pretty much smarter than the men, more ambitious than the men, and achieving more than the men. Just the development of the world. And so we are making advances.
Yeah.
Neil, I'm not sure how much to say, Peter. I need to see Neil and I talk.
I understand what you're feeling there, because, like, interestingly, during that time period that you were neighbours with him, Barry Oliver was my neighbour here in Kurrambong in the 90s, in 2000s, and you grow to really, so what you want to criticise on the one hand some of SPD's actions, but Barry's one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and we enjoyed conversation and communication. Absolutely. So it's not, I understand your feeling like of hesitation to unpack it, because we don't want to be seen to be criticising other human beings and trying to humiliate and shame people. No. Because we would hate that happening onto ourselves.
In many respects, he was not as conservative as a lot of people probably thought him to be. I'll give you a funny story. In the probably about 95, I think this was, maybe 96, there was a wedding that I attended, and Neil was there, and it was held in the General Conference Auditorium, and the reception afterwards was in the cafeteria, and that's quite a handsome cafeteria. It's just not like you and I might remember when we went to town with Mum and Dad, and you went to eat out in the cafeteria. I'd never been to a restaurant until I'd gone to Avondale. It was a fish and chip shop, or it was the Coles or the David Jones cafeteria. And so after the wedding, before the reception, Neil said to me, he said, "Would you like to have a look at my old office?" I said, "Sure." Well, the first thing, it wasn't his office anymore, because Robert Falkenberg had taken over from him in 1990, you see. And so this is 95, about there, and Falkenberg didn't last much longer than that, a couple more years, I think. But, about 98, 99. So I follow him, and we go up and enter the GC president's office via the back door. And he's showing me his office, because he was president of the GC when that Silver Spring facility was built. When I was doing my doctorate at the University of Maryland, 86 to mid-'89, I would take my sponsorship reports into the GC. And first of all, right through until, say, 1980, the end of 88, it was Tacoma Park.
Mm.
Tacoma Park is where I was working at Columbia Union College, building the adult evening program. Cindy was born and raised there. Her father was the chief medical technology officer, and so this was sort of home. Then they moved out to Silver Spring, about 6 or 7 miles away. So here I am. Neil put emphasis into what he wanted in his office. It's no longer his office, but I'm in there with him on this Sunday afternoon before the reception starts, having a look at his office. And then we go out, and he locks the door, and he says, he says, shh, I've got a key. And so he hadn't surrendered his key.
I've still got a key.
He's got a key. Anyway,
that says so many things on so many levels.
He said, I can't go to this reception. I'm going to go home and have Eleanor make me a baked potato. And I said, I'd like to join you. But so there was this very personal aspect. He was heavily involved in Russia, the church in Russia at that particular time. And he was worried about his son, Ted, because Ted would roll up to see Dad every once in a while, see how good you are on cars here, Peter, in a Dodge Viper.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in those days, a Dodge Viper was the hottest production car alive. It wasn't his, but he would come up to see Mum and Dad. And Neil said to me on one occasion, he said, he's much more conservative than me, you know.
Interesting.
He said that. And when Ted was appointed president in 2010, Eleanor Running, who was the long-running, that's a pun on names, Eleanor Running, was the long-term language teacher at the seminary.
Yes.
From the late 50s.
Yes.
She died.
Richard Coffin mentioned her yesterday, yeah.
That's right.
Very powerful woman.
Lovely lady, dignified lady. And when Ted was taught by her when he did his MDiv. And so now, many years later, he's becoming GC president. And she wrote to him and said, Ted, as you assume the responsibilities for church leadership around the world, just remember the church needs a shepherd more than it needs a dictator. What a statement.
Wow. Boy, I wish I could have got to know her by hearing all accounts of her legendary status within the church. Yeah. Did she write books, or is there any recordings of her on cassette or any video footage?
I'm sure she wrote books about her languages. You know, they were basically curriculum type books.
Yeah. Do you think, just back to Neil Wilson there, do you think he was a politician wanting to protect the element of the church? He could see into the future that if the Adventist church lost its confidence in Ellen G. White and the Sabbath and the imminent second coming return of the Saviour, that the church could crumble to some degree. So he was kind of protecting, in many ways, what he felt was an important institution, with certain kind of standards that needed to be kept in play and certain pillars that needed to be kept in the structure. But do you think that perhaps Keith Parmenter and our Aussie guys were a little bit more into it from a personal perspective, not wanting to criticise, but were they under a different kind of pressure to him?
Absolutely, no question.
Can you unpack a little bit of your thoughts on that?
No, I'm not going to go that far, but they lost support of elements of the church constituency in Australia and New Zealand that L.C. Naden and R.R. Frame did not have to worry about it. In other words, they were still in control. But when Pastor Parmenter and Pastor Taylor came in, the CBs had gained so much momentum, and these were both within the organized church, not just retired evangelists, these were other pastors and teachers and so forth too. I've worked with some of these teachers that were on the perfectionist bent, and then many church members. I mean, there are funny stories, Peter, and Jill will know immediately who I'm talking about now. But I had a person in Melbourne, just his kids were at the academy, who was sending cassettes all over the place, and he made phone calls all over the place. And when Des and Jill are in the United States, he's calling them, and when he's not calling them, he's calling me. And we laughed and laughed about a lot of this, but there was agitation from the left and from the right, and I think the South Pacific, or it wasn't South Pacific, I think Parmenter Taylor knew, as the two leaders of the Australasian division at that time, action had to be taken. They were getting it from the conservative side, no question. And there's another issue there that I'm not going to. And then Neil Wilson was fully aware of this too, because he was getting agitation from around the world. Not just him. You've got Wood, who's the Review and Herald, the editor. You've got I mentioned him before, married Peter Rampton married his wife, his daughter, Herbert Douglas, and all of these guys. They were all out to keep traditional Adventism as it was, and that did not include the gospel as Des was talking.
Yes,
was preaching it. And frankly, if Glacier View had been about the gospel and the gospel alone, we might have had a different outcome, but it wasn't.
Good point.
And I think Neil, at the last minute, probably was the main voice that said, we've got to end this relationship, which meant severing Des.
Yeah. And that then created this flow-on effect where the concerned brethren all around the world, and they are linked, they networked, they knew each other and kept in touch. That then led to almost a victory for them, which gave them a little bit more power, particularly here in Australia perhaps, and they then really got into the ear of our leaders, who then, what did they do next in Australia? What happened post Glacier View with that?
I leave Australia in at the end of 1985, and I go to do my doctorate at the University of Maryland, in Maryland, and we lived close by. I lived in Tacoma Park, and I came home in mid-89, and I'm at Avondale, and no, we didn't see that much difference in a lot of ways. I felt a lot of the energy in the old Avondale that I knew wasn't there. But then I've thought about that many times, and I think those of us that were at Avondale in the late 50s through to the mid-70s were there in the golden years. I mean, these were exceptional people we had teach us during those particular years, and that's saying nothing against those that are there now.
And there was an anticipation of excitement, and so it's not criticising people now. I see what you mean.
No. But, I'll come back to what I said before. All of a sudden, we've lost the game in stop smoking. We're no longer the leaders. We used to be. Alcohol, the Ernie Steeds of this world aren't there. And the sense of mission that we had to not only supply missionaries, we had to supply administrators, we had to supply money to build hospitals, schools, churches, and so forth. And all of a sudden, when you come to the 90s, the mission field is starting to look after those things themselves. And when you look at the offerings coming into the GC, I mean, South America, I haven't been everywhere, but I've been to Brazil, and I've been to Venezuela. I've been 3 times to Venezuela, lucky to get out the last time. But the church has impressive leaders in South America. The publishing house there, unbelievable, the largest in the world. The television station down there, take your breath away. They've got 9 studios, Peter, that are operating well, I've heard that sometimes they operate 24/7.
Mm. And are they more of a
Traditional Adventists,
conservative kind of have more of a
like traditional Adventists,
conservative
yeah.
modality?
Yeah. If there was a GC president appointed, this is just me, outside of North America, um, TED, Trans-European Division, or South Pacific Division, as far as competency is concerned, I would look to South America.
Mm.
But you're going to get a conservative, there's no question.
Yeah, yeah.
And you see, any wonder, because the missionaries that went out to these places, including from Avondale, were oftentimes more conservative.
Mm.
Not always. I
No.
think the group that went in the 70s, my generation, weren't necessarily that way, but those that before were.
Yeah.
And so I've been to places in Africa where you've got on the west coast, you've got administrators that arrive at work at 10 o'clock in the morning for a meeting somewhere, and you're outside, and they have a spotless white shirt on with a red shiny tie and a black serge suit. And by the end of the day, the collar is just dripping with perspiration, but that tie isn't loosened.
Mm. Mm.
You know, they're the administrator, they're on show,
Mm.
and the church members expect it. And so, no, and then this is where Neil, another question I asked Neil on one occasion was, what is the some of the biggest challenges Adventism has got as we go to the 21st century? So this is a 95, 96 question I asked him.
Mm.
And he said splitting of the church.
Neil Wilson said that.
Yes. Now, and echoes of that happened from the GC in 1980. Wasn't that the GC where
I think
some
he's nailed it. I think that's a
child
very,
will not stay quiet much longer?
yeah, very astute assessment. It's what's happening. It's what's happening.
Well,
Do you,
but Ted can't let this happen, you see, because and the North American division had too many colleges and universities, but every one of them belongs to a union. Just so happens that in California you've got La Sierra, plus you've got PUC. Loma Linda's a general conference institution. Andrews is a general conference institution. Oakwood was, but now it's come under the auspices of the North American division about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And so no union president wants to see a school close or a hospital on his watch. But where it was devastated was in New England Union. And that's, of course, where Adventism was born. And we lost our hospital up there, and we've lost AUC. I was asked 3 times to go to AUC as president. Not that dumb. Why would you go to a sinking ship, you know?
Yeah.
But just tragic.
There seems to be, my personal view is that it's oil and water. Those who follow the more Des Ford kind of approach to Adventism, which we know dates back to interesting your Cottrells and your was it Lewis Weir you said, or Louis Weir?
Yes.
And even right back to what was the guy we mentioned yesterday, Guy Wilmoth. There's this kind of new theology, yeah, and as seen in the questions on doctrine, this kind of new Adventism, I don't see how the two can mix together. But from every liberal pastor and leader that I've interviewed, they're very hopeful that there is a place for them, that they can work together. I'm not as confident of that, but I certainly uphold and support their desire to remain Adventist and to make it work and to find their place within Adventism. But I think the church is heading for a split because both sides are kind of hobbling each other. I'd rather say to the conservatives, there you go, run with your 3ABN style Adventism and enjoy it and just go for it. And with the others, maybe they can become more defined within Adventism, or maybe they can do something new and separate. But where are they getting their kind of hope for it all coming good from?
And again, they're
Where are they kind of getting where's the evidence that gives them confidence and hope for the church,
will stay together.
to accept them and nurture them, and that it'll come good again for them?
Well, Peter, I'm not being facetious here, but you got to remember this is the remnant church, and it's going through to victory. And these people believe that. Whether it'll split or not, we'll have to see. It probably wouldn't worry me. And I didn't say to you at the beginning, but because I grew up around Lutherans, I feel almost as much a Lutheran as I am an Adventist at times. The Lutheran Church in Australia is not the Lutheran Church in North America, because there are several different churches in North America. And by the way, in my Hahndorf hometown, there are 2 Lutheran churches. One belonged to the Missouri Synod, and one belonged to the synods from Germany originally, and stayed together. But these 2 churches in the same town, half a mile apart, they would work, members would work with each other during the week. They wouldn't work with each other. They wouldn't worship with each other. And some of that feeling is still there now. There's one family in particular that I am very, very close to. And that's the situation. And you think of it, the Anglican Church is different in different parts of the world. And so when Adventism started to mushroom with membership like it did, it almost becomes too hard to handle. Now, that membership of 20 million probably could be chopped in half, certainly 12 million or thereabouts, but it's still a lot of people. And back in the days of Glacier View, and going back to questions on doctrine, you were looking at 3 million people, the bulk of them in North America. They're not now.
No.
And
it just seems. It seems. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no, it's all right. It's a good thing you do interrupt.
No. I try very hard not to in my interviews, because I want this to be about the people I'm interviewing and not myself. But I think it's an important thing to note that the more liberal progressive Adventist desires to stay within the church, desires to find a place, desires to accept divergent thinking and to seek unity through diversity. But the other side that has birthed from the conservatives, that have birthed from Glacier View, joyous that Des Ford was frocked, they do not want the liberal guys in the church. I guess I'm trying to dig deep about where is this. But the Liberals are still speaking with great hope and love for the church and want to stay. But they don't. Are they grasping the fact that these guys do not want them here?
Who are these guys?
The liberal progressives that are seeing that almost cannot believe that the compliance document is going to have any effect, that cannot believe that Ted Wilson will gain more power, that cannot believe the Conservatives are growing. They don't seem to realise that these other guys, the Ted Wilson proteges, want them out of the church. They still feel that it's going to be their home again one day.
Yeah. You see, how much do I say? Go back to Glacier View for a minute, because prior to Glacier View, some of the administrators at the General Conference, and I don't know whether Pastor Parmenter and Taylor were involved in these meetings at all. They might have had telephone conferences at that time, I don't know. But I know at the GC, because I've been told that some of the GC executive committees that were looking at the ramifications of Glacier View with a fallout that Desmond Ford would be defrocked, they actually sat down and did a mathematical calculation as to how many church members they could afford to lose. Now that sounds callous, it sounds cutthroat, it sounds despicable, but they did that. And I think the number was something like, we can afford to lose 70,000.
Yeah.
Now let's remember, this is exactly in line with world politics, because I'm a teenager in 1962, and India and China are likely to go to war. like they had a skirmish a week or two ago when the Chinese killed 20 odd people. There were no guns involved, but they came at them with clubs and beat up and killed 20 Indians on the border between China and India. Go back to 1962. Mao Zedong said he was prepared to lose 10 million Chinese soldiers to defeat India if it came to all-out war.
Right.
This is what organizations do. They're in it to survive. And I think Neil Wilson was not necessarily being callous. He was just doing a mathematical estimation of what's it going to cost us. And these are the sort of conversations that administrators have that are supposed to stay in the room, but they don't. And I'll give you one more bit of gossip too about that room. There were times when Neil was grappling with such hard decisions and hard issues, he apparently would put his head in his hands and just moan, oh, what are we going to do? Oh. You know, now we laugh at that a little and smile.
Yeah, yeah. But that was...
It has a right to probably allow his personality to come out. And when he got to the stage where he couldn't handle stuff, he didn't go and have a beer at night to calm his spirits down. He sat in the committee room and groaned.
Yeah, let off steam.
I've never been going to do that, but I've thought about it from time to time.
I think, so let's look at these 70,000. Let's get metaphoric. We've got the church leaders, supported by the concerned brethren, very keen to keep a traditional historicist Adventism alive and well, and the 70,000 that they're willing to let go of, and I know that number's different now because we're talking back when the church only had 4 million people.
Yeah. What you've just done, if you allow for that 70,000, you've basically cut out the membership of Australia and New Zealand, not the Pacific, not the South Pacific, but Australia and New Zealand back in those days. Gone, just like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so you've got our metaphoric number of 70,000. They are the people they're willing to let go of. These are the people I'm talking about, the liberals, the progressives, those who don't want to be pinned down to this is what I believe. They're more open to divergent ideas. They're interested in unity through diversity. So they're in the firing line. The church doesn't care if they get gone. But here they are sitting back going, oh, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they really want us gone. I think it's going to come good again. That's what I'm trying to dig into. Why are they so positive that it's going to come good again when it's demonstrably not?
Because it's the remnant church. And I think I would just...
and they see themselves as part... They don't want to be separate to that because they might lose their salvation.
I'm not mocking this when I say this. I honestly believe this.
Yeah.
And I would make one comment with what you said. It's not that they don't care. It's just that they are on such a mission for God that the church is going to go on to victory, and that church is historic Adventism.
So are you including the 70?
We are prepared to say with regret, with reluctance, but we could afford to lose 70,000 members.
Yeah.
It's not quite as close when you say it that way.
I hear what you're saying. I'm referring to the 70,000 who are sitting over here, whether we see it as mean, malicious, or that these other guys see them as part of the remnant. This bunch that are being willing to be let go, they seem to not notice with any concern that is the case. They seem to think they will be fine and they will survive and they won't be let go. Why are they confident in that?
Look, Peter, this is getting to the crux, and I'm looking at the time and it's marching on, but this is getting to the crux of what a lot of my concern is, and it's been this way for 30, 40 years. It's wonderful to have administrators. It's wonderful to have Bible scholars. It's wonderful to have church businesses like the SHF. Don't know what its new name is, but it's not that, I know.
Sanitarium.
But the bottom line is, lay people today don't necessarily want or even understand any heavy dosage or focus on theology. I mean, these are men and women, like uncles and aunts, brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, kids growing up that we know. I've got them here in the US now. You've got them in Australia. I come from a family of 6, and my mother came from a family of 6, and there were 26 cousins in the Bowman family from the Bowman 6 kids in South Australia.
Wow.
And a good half of them went to Avondale or went to the Sydney Adventist Hospital. Adventism has been hard on conferences like Tasmania and South Australia, decimated the young people coming up for generations, you know. But let's just have a look. Most of those relatives of mine that aren't connected with the church, or even are connected with the church, are struggling just to pay bills, to raise kids, just to live. And so they go along to church and they want a blessing. And what is that blessing? To give them enough courage, to give them enough stamina to get through the next week.
Yeah.
And we thrilled in the 60s and 70s and 80s when it was the gospel. And it wasn't the legalism approach to Adventism that is coming back. I've heard you say that and some others. It is in North America, no question.
Oh, yeah.
In my wilderness years, when I went, after I left Columbia Union College, there were 13 years. And on one occasion, I was asked, because GC and NID people were trying to get me back. Would you like to go here? Would you like to go there? One of the offers I got was principal of Battle Creek Academy.
Wow.
Now, my dear wife is not going to appreciate this comment, but she's a city gal. And the education director who asked me would I go there knows her very well. And he said, now, you could make it, but I'm not sure Cindy could. That's because women in the Battle Creek area dare not wear a dress that has more arms showing than down here, okay? No straps, none of that, no makeup, you know, and your hair can have a little bit of a curler in it perhaps or whatever. The annoying thing is men can wear cufflinks and they can wear tie tacks, and that's it. And so I wasn't going to go to Battle Creek Academy, but there are areas in the US that are more conservative than you can believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's growing. And under Ted Wilson, it's being fostered and it's flourishing. So just look, I know time's moving, but there's some key things I just want to get your thoughts on. If we go back to Glacier View and the fallout of Glacier View, between 1980 and before you went to the States in 85, where were you again in that period?
I was in Victoria, Lily Dale Academy.
So you were getting some good support there, as you mentioned, from the leaders, but you would have noticed in the other areas, like your Gordons, other friends and colleagues of yours and family members, no doubt, being defrocked, ostracized, asked to leave, pressured to leave, deciding to leave. What was your emotional response to all these friends getting the boot or choosing to leave?
Looking back, I guess I'm a little ashamed to say, but you were so flat out busy on a boarding school campus. And I was involved in the Independent Schools Association. We had a concert band there that was heavily sought after and was called a local band because the people loved it. We were in the Moomba Parade.
Wow.
And this brought us a great deal of attraction from the local community, going down to Ringwood and so forth. And I'm ashamed to say this in a way, and I haven't said this to Gordon, but Gordon's story happened while I was sitting on the union committee of the Trans-Australia Union Conference under Pastor Judd's leadership. And I don't remember his name coming up at all. Now, maybe it didn't. But I would have thought that I would have. I stayed with Gordon in one of these ingathering episodes that I loved so much. And that's when he and his wife were in Glen Innes. But I don't remember his name coming up. And we would hear a name every once in a while. And sometimes you'd contact them and other times you wouldn't. Some, by the way, and Harry Bellis and I have connected since you have gotten going,
Yeah.
and since Gordon has been doing his little program. And we know there's something like 180 ministers.
Mm.
There are some of us who wonder whether they didn't say they left because of Glacier View or Desmond Ford, but actually used that as a catalyst to leave because they were tired of things.
Yeah.
And I've had some say that to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't Glacier View, it wasn't Desmond Ford. I just got jack of being in the ministry.
Yeah.
I was asked to be, no, it's all right. I was asked to be ordained in 1982. And there are a couple of reasons why it didn't happen. But one of them was it wasn't cool to be a pastor for some of those years.
Right. Right.
Say no more.
Yeah. The studies show that there was a heightened number of people leaving, but yeah, you could have, people could have used it as a bit of a smokescreen to go, I'm getting out of here.
Right.
If you'd been in another conference or union back then, even because there was two unions, because you were obviously a supporter and you really admired Des Ford, do you think you would have been under the spotlight to be potentially
I can tell you now, and there are a couple of my buddies from Lilydale days. Some of them went through some tough times. Murray Krieg is a very, very good friend, and he came twice to the academy as the Dean of Boys, and then went out into the pastorate and came back again. He went through some very, very tough years. If I didn't have the support of Claude Judd, Bob Parr, now he left and went up to Greater Sydney for the most of the time I was principal at Lilydale from 80 to 85. I think he left at the end of 1980 to go up, but he was a great influence and friend of mine in the mid-70s too. But if I didn't have men like that, Ken Lowe, Clive Barrett, Bob Possingham, who was the youth leader at that particular time, Barry Crabtree, I wouldn't have stayed.
Right.
Who wants to get your teeth kicked in, Peter?
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I preached every second. I preached twice a month for most of those 6 years, and during the other 5 years when I was at Lilydale before I became principal, I preached probably once a month. I liked preaching. I still like preaching. I'm an idiot. I read books to prepare sermons that I'll never preach. These were caring men who valued their workers as a human asset. And this is something Adventism needs to do, and it needs to do it about 10 years, 20 years ago. It's got to get better at human resource management, and it's got to get better at understanding how organizational behavior operates.
Yes.
And until it does that,
yeah,
all of the struggles it's got on a global basis right now, I worry. I worry about its future.
Yeah. One of the side organic benefits or products or things coming out of this group, the SDAQ&A, is that there is a beautiful connection between people who love a lot of the benefits of Adventism, who have open minds for discussion, who see what you're saying with it from a sociological perspective, who yearn for a connection that maybe some of us have missed out on inside the actual church.
Right.
And it's a nice thing to see growing and developing. Like you're even saying there, where your connection with Gordon, your connection with Harry, there's a nice camaraderie growing within the group.
There really is. There really is. I want to say just a couple more things. I connected with Colin Standish.
I was literally about to say, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. In my days at Lilydale in the mid-70s, Russell and Colin Standish had another sidekick, His name was John Clifford.
All right.
And John Clifford was a doctor. I mean, the Standish brothers graduated from Avondale as primary teachers, went out and taught for a few years and then came back. Russell went on and finished medicine, and Colin went to University of Sydney and did psychology. As I understand it, he was the first graduate of Sydney University psychology program, the first, and then came to Avondale. But John Clifford was a doctor too, and these were the guys that were writing back and forth. By the way, you might know, you may not, I don't know, Ken Nichols. Ken's father, John, was a good buddy of mine, and Ken went to Avondale in the early 70s, about 74 or thereabouts.
Hold it up to your camera.
I'm sorry. And wrote
Up a bit higher.
Is it? Can you see it? It's not clear.
No, just read it out for us.
The Biblical Concept of Righteousness by Faith by K.H. Nichols. And this was a critical analysis of the conflicting concepts of righteousness by faith in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Australasian Division, by J.A. Clifford and R.R. Standish.
Wow.
And Colin is in, he'd be in Jamaica at this particular time. And I just want to say, when Colin spent a couple of years in Jamaica, and then he went to Columbia Union College, and he was actually president of Columbia Union College when Cindy was there as a student. And so Ted Wilson might have just gone at that stage. I think he was there 77 and 78 as president. And he was counseling students at that particular time on his weird ideas that sex is only for procreation. Now, I know this because I've spoken to some of these individuals, but he was also under perfectionism. And there's a very significant minister who has just recently retired by the name of Richard Fredericks. And if ever there's a person who is sort of Des Ford's cousin or son, perhaps, because he's younger, it would be Richard Fredericks. Richard Fredericks went to Columbia Union College in the early to mid 70s, came under Bob Brimsmead and particularly Colin Standish's influence and became a perfectionist. And then he started to hear of this individual called Desmond Ford, and he switched completely and became a member of what some of us guys in Victoria used to call ourselves a member of the grace team, the gospel team. And so Richard Frederick was a teacher of theology when I was finishing my doctorate at Columbia Union College. And then when I went back as vice president for academic administration in 1994, Richard had left that post and was a pastor, but he was a charismatic pastor. People would flock after him. And he ended up at the Damascus Seventh-day Adventist Church in Montgomery County. And after a period of time, with some of the powerful writing against the Sabbath that was coming out, so Des Ford wrote a powerful piece on the Sabbath. Loma Linda read it and came back to Bob Brimsmead. Des wrote a reply to Bob Brimsmead. Loma Linda came back to Des Ford and said it's not powerful enough. Bob Brimsmead wrote a very, very powerful booklet on the Sabbath. Richard Fredericks actually left Adventism. It was a huge stink. It was a huge hoorah.
When did he leave?
And he started his own church. It was a Sunday church. First of all, it was a Saturday night church, and then it became a Sunday church, and it's still going.
When did he start that?
What's that?
When did he leave and start that?
He probably, no, I said 30 years. It's not 30 years. He left Adventist employ with the Potomac Conference probably in the about 93, 94, something like that. And then he went up to, interesting, the name of the Damascus Road, I think non-denominational church or something like that, but they worship on Sundays. A lot of Adventists still go there. I went there a number of times. And Richard was a very caring, wonderful preacher, and the gospel came through just like it did with Des Ford. He's just retired, and You know, there's a story from a person, two Adventists, two Australian Adventists had influence on him, one in the perfection field and one in the grace area. And he's one of the few that has successfully left the church, started another church, and still that church is going.
Wow. If you get a chance, if you could put in the comments later, maybe a link to his name or a reminder for me to chase that up.
Yes.
And also you were mentioning this Tim Keller guy. If you could put a link to someone, we could explore that too.
Actually, and I don't mean to sound as though I'm deserting the ship here and all this type of thing, but when you get too close to the top, sometimes you just say enough is enough. The women's ordination has been a horrendous situation, but Ted's right. Most of the world of Adventism won't accept it. And I mean, you're talking about the church in Africa. Remember back in '93 when Bill Clinton was still president of the US, that's when the Rwanda situation took place. And
Terrible.
Adventist Tutsis are against Adventist Tutsis and Hutu or whatever. The two tribes, anyway.
Tribes, I know who you
They're
mean.
Adventists. They're in there killing each other.
Yeah,
you know. And so what we're dealing with now is a conservative world that can't handle some of the more progressive areas like women's ordination, like age of the earth, and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I have found myself turning actually to a lot of sociology. And I'm reading fascinating stuff that talks about the secularization of civilization, Western civilization. There's some very, very amazing insights that I'm picking up on this. I'm a historian before I'm a sociologist, but it's amazing stuff. And this guy, here's the latest one on with now Christian Smith, was at, I think he's still at Notre Dame, was at the North Carolina Chapel Hill, or the other way around. He might be there now, but amazing stuff. Professors that are coming out of Notre Dame, just down from Andrews, the most significant Catholic university in America, perhaps even in the world. It's just terrific. And the world's changing, you know. And I have found a person that Desmond Ford and his daughter found. I think Des has spoken with him. Elaine, I know, has been in to see him. She's just recently returned back to Australia. And his name's Timothy Keller, Presbyterian, was a pastor in Virginia, been 29 years in Manhattan. 70 years of age, 3 weeks ago, very, very sadly, started chemo for pancreatic surgery, pancreatic cancer. 5,000 church members in Manhattan are worshipping in his 3 churches on Sundays. They've got a marvelous outreach into poverty, into homelessness, into dealing with young professionals and all the rest of it. And you know, when he came to Manhattan 29 years ago, you know where he first started his church? The Manhattan Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Really?
He hired the building on Sunday, and that's where they began.
Wow.
Just an amazing man. Des is a better preacher, but if you want to hear the gospel, pure and true, Timothy Keller on YouTube.
I'll get you to maybe share a link. What's good about this conversation, it continues on in the comments for weeks to come.
Peter, can I do 2 things?
Yes, please.
Very, very quickly. I said I grew up in Harndorf.
Yes.
Here's an interesting situation. These Germans came over from Prussia in 1838. 1839, they started the town of Harndorf. Barossa Valley is where Colin and Russell Standish came from. The Barossa Valley, the beginning of the wine industry. And in 1844, Pastor August Cavell led his parishioners carrying chains at midnight to the top of Kaiser Stuhl. It's the highest hill in the Barossa Valley. Today it's a wine, the name for a wine. But they climbed that hill, and you know what they were doing? The parishioners and Pastor Cavell went up there to catch the devil and lock him up. 1844. In the 1850s, Pastor Carver Glen led his flock to a place outside Tanunda, Langmeal, one night to await the end of the world that he had seen in a vision. So we are not the only ones that had that. I want to just tell you quickly about Colin Standish. I'm in Andrews, and Colin Standish has the school at Heartland. He started Heartland and was the founding president, and went there, I think, in around 1980 or something like that. He left Weimar because Weimar was becoming too liberal for him. Can you believe that? So he goes to Heartland, which is in central Virginia. It's an old plantation going back to the Civil War period, the antebellum period before the Civil War, and they called it Heartland. And they were taking some correspondence courses from Griggs University, which was the old Home Study International. So I'm tasked to go down there and talk to them. Well, I was happy to do that because Colin taught me psychology. And so I roll up, and he's there. His dear wife, what's her name? Lovely lady. Can't think of her name just now. She was taking their adopted son up to the University of Virginia, where he was enrolled in law. He would be finished now. He did not attend an accredited university. That's a big deal over here. Don't go to a school unless it's fully accredited. Heartland isn't. So he had Heartland coursework. And before that, he probably went to Weimar, and he was accepted in. Anyway, so I'm meeting with Colin, and he's mellowed. He had just come back from a visit up into the New England area. And these Standish brothers, they sure could raise money wherever. They raised it in Australia, and they raised it all over the world, wherever they could. In Germany, you name it. He had mellowed a lot, and as we ate together, some of his food was dropping and falling on his tie and his shirt. And, you know, your heart goes out to him, but I'm getting up there too now, so if you come and visit me one day, I'm not going to wear a tie. I don't want my peas to fall on my tie. And we talked about the past a little, and he was going to go on tape, but of course I've missed out on that now. But he said to me, and this is something that take for what it's worth, he said, you know, I never ever had an argument with Des Ford. I just about swallowed my peas at that stage.
Yeah.
Because of all the writing and the vitriol that took place, you know. But it was just an interesting experience to talk with him.
Yeah. How old would he have been at that stage when you were talking to him?
He was getting close to 80.
Yeah.
He told me whether he was 80 or 81 or 79. I just don't remember. He had just handed over the leadership of Heartland to somebody else, and these guys stayed in contact with me afterwards more than Colin did. And they actually, when I left at the end of 2016, Andrews, they wanted me to come on board to be a consultant, but I couldn't do it because accreditation's a serious thing, and they didn't have the money or the expertise to enter into that sort of an enterprise. So that's it anyway.
Do you think, just in closing, do you think if an Adventist and eventually Des was this kind of an Adventist, if you don't believe anything supernatural happened on October 22, 1844, you can still successfully be an Adventist?
I don't, but for years I swallowed my tongue almost and continued to be an Adventist. But you take away 1844, you're taking away the remnant, you're taking away the concept of the Sabbath, you're taking away the sanctuary, and so forth. You're taking away Ellen White. And if you're totally honest, what have you got left? Now, if somebody decides to say, and there was a person in not in Currenbog, he lived out near Shingle Splitters. I forget what those areas are called, but he lived out that way.
Mm.
And on his door, and I thought he was brave actually having this little plaque, "Nothing happened here in 1844. I thought that was extremely brave, because I saw him with division men that went to his place at times and so forth. Anyway,
It was a special plaque for them.
but the truth of the matter is, I believe what I've just said to you back just after Glacier View.
Wow.
And the thought then, with a lot of us, and I can remember talking with Brian Craig, one of the best family ministry men we've got, or we ever had in the South Pacific Division. That's not to mention my mate Trafford Fisher,
Yeah.
isn't wonderful too, but I was there when Brian was in that role.
Yeah.
And Trafford and I worked at Avondale there for a couple of years. But a group of us, and I can remember Pastor Judd saying this to some of us, probably you have a choice whether you can still stay on board and look for the good things in Adventism and try and warm people's hearts and cheer them up with the gospel, give them the assurance of salvation so that they're not nervous wrecks. You know, was it somebody last night who was it Richard last night making the comment?
Talk about the assurance of the
People
gospel.
coming to their death and not being didn't feel as though they had assurance of salvation.
Yeah.
And so many of us did that. We stayed on.
Yeah.
And I have moved out of the scene. I wearied of all the hassle over women's ordination. I wearied over an area that I haven't heard much talk of, so I'm not even going to go there, but the age of the earth. And then when I look at the shabby treatment of so many people, there's one lady who's probably listening tonight who lives up the road from me, I mean, many states up the road from me, who hasn't been given her full retirement by the church. I find that terrible.
Yeah.
And we, so it's the lack of understanding of human resource management and the proper understanding of organizational behavior. You treat workers as the most valuable asset an organization has got. And when that stops, you're in trouble. And you can fake it and you can hang in there for a period of time. But look at all the nonsense we're going through now, particularly in this country. This country is burning, it's hurting. Did you see that clip on the news? We saw it yesterday, where on Sunday a car pulls up alongside of a man who's walking across the street with his daughter. You see on the film the handgun outside of the window, the car window, and the gun fires and kills the man and leaves this little 8-year-old girl. I mean, that's what we're dealing with now. And civilization is in trouble. And here's the thing, the corporations are caving in and funding this. Higher education is on the wrong side of the spectrum as far as I'm concerned right now. And you've got civilization being challenged. Sure, you can argue that the excesses of corporate America, when many corporate leaders are getting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 times more the salary of the average worker, that's wrong too.
Yeah.
But you get to the stage where you almost think, "Come, Lord Jesus," because I haven't given that up.
Yeah.
And Cindy and I both raised in Adventism. I'm a third generation, she's second. She grew up in a very, very conservative home, but a wonderful home. And we both go around the home singing hymns to ourselves. And some of my most favoured moments are Vespers at Avondale, in the old days. And at Lilydale, nothing is sweeter than listening to 40, 45, up to 48 boys singing in their dorm in a worship period. How sweet is that? And so I don't know, I'm waffling now, but that's
No,
still
no,
what.
you're not at all. I love the authenticity of what you're saying. It's not waffling at all.
I'll
Um,
tell you one thing, Peter. Just one more. I put this out. This is a guy you've been encouraged to try and make contact with, Jerry Gladstone, A Theologian's Journey from Adventism to Mainstream Christianity. I'll send that to you.
uh,
I think several have suggested you get hold of him.
yeah, can you hold it up a little
It's
high? I
not
just
a
want to
big
just check
story.
his name there.
What's
What's
that?
his name again? What's his name again?
Jerry, Jerry Gladstone, Gladson. I'll send you that.
Yeah. Oh, really? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we've got some people going to try and grab him. Um, it's in many ways the church could be defined, well, one way, but by saying you either believe something supernatural happened October 22, 1844, or you don't. And I'd just like to see people that don't believe it have the freedom to be able to say that and to enjoy what the gospel means to them without being hindered by it for them. And those who do believe it to not be hindered and have to deal with the tensions from those of us who don't. If that makes any sense, I just see.
You want your cake and eat it too.
No, the opposite. I'm sort of, for me, I'm saying, why not?
No, I know where
If you
you're
don't,
coming from.
oh yeah. If you don't believe anything supernatural happened in 1844, that's a pretty big thing if you want to stay being an Adventist.
Yeah. But let me come into the defence here, and I think I heard Lowell Tarling say this: believe what you want to believe, and if that's what you want to believe, then that's okay.
Yeah.
I still enjoy reading the Conflict of the Ages series. Not Great Controversy. I've never read Great Controversy all the way through. I've had to teach from it at times, and so I look at what I had to teach from. But I gave on that a long time ago because of the use of sources and history and so forth, and so on. But Cindy and I were talking a few weeks ago, and we're getting old, Peter, and I couldn't remember Jethro as the name connected with Moses, as the father-in-law. And so I went and got out Patriarchs and Prophets, and I just started reading through some pages, and I think this is pretty good stuff. And so forget the plagiarism, and I don't know that I've ever read anything about Patriarchs and Prophets being plagiarized, but it was just good history, or good biblical history, however you want to say it. I enjoyed that. And so if that suits somebody,
Yeah.
we've all relied upon Ellen White too much.
Yeah.
I've just outgrown it. And I can say now I don't feel badly about it.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to adhere to that and so forth, I respect that.
Yeah.
And I'll probably even join in with them if I'm in their home or in their church or something like that.
Yeah.
But a coward, I don't know if it's a coward's way out, but Adventism is my roots. It always will be. Can't do anything about that. It's just that what matters to me mostly nowadays is getting a clear understanding of the nature of Christ and the atonement. Now, how many views of the atonement are there?
Yeah.
And the Spectrum crowd, some of my friends in the Spectrum crowd are heading over to a guy from Minnesota by the name of Greg Boyd, and he goes even further than N.T. Wright and so forth. And I'm sticking with Tim Keller because he and I got it right.
And you raise a really important thing that I need to always be mindful of too, because if you're mentioning Bob Wolfgram there and Lowell Tarling,
Yes.
grew out of a very similar situation, and Bob chooses to be an Adventist and Noel doesn't, but they're still best mates.
That's right.
And I shouldn't sit from a position going, well, if you don't believe in 1844, you shouldn't be an Adventist, or I become just as bad as the people who want to get rid of people in the church.
You're looking at it the way we were brought up, and there's an element of legalism here, I think, too. But let's leave that out for the minute. A healthy individual today, whether he chooses or she chooses to be an Adventist or not, has to admit there's a lot more grey in the world than there used to be black and white years ago. You know, and part of the fascination with this sociology that I'm doing with Marsden and Smith and some of these other guys right now, and I probably want to finish with a interesting little quote, if you'll let me.
Yeah.
I've got here. They trace the story in the United States after the Civil War, going towards the beginning of the 20th century, where secularism makes inroads. And it's actually fascinating to look at the dominance of the Protestant point of view in every area. I mean, Roman Catholics were bashed. And my mother tells me, coming into the Adventist church during World War II, after they came in from the country of Ardrossan over on York Peninsula into Adelaide, and she's a brand new Adventist and she's going along to church and she's getting a little bit of pushback by the Protestants. But you know who's also getting the pushback by the Protestants? The Catholic young girls that are in the workforce. And I worked with Cindy used to sell real estate in Maryland, and was in Bethesda, Maryland, beautiful part of the Chevy Chase, Maryland, Potomac, large Jewish audience, population. These people are, 300,000 or so Jews, and they are superbly wealthy, some of these people. They own aircraft. So we're selling houses, and I go along on a Sunday to help Cindy with an open house. And these are $1 million homes. I would sit and welcome people in and be pleasant and serve them drinks and cookies and this sort of stuff, and look at their bookshelves. And then I start buying some of the books these folk have got in there. I knew Abraham Heschel beforehand and so forth, but I've got amazing books just on the celebration of the Sabbath in the Jewish community, where they lament the fact that it's not being adhered to in North America like it once was. You know who they quote as doing a better job than the Jews? The Adventists.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be more tolerant. We've got to be more patient. We can't see the world as being black and white. And that's what led to the secularization in North American, pretty much Western civilization.
Yeah.
What was dominant in the 19th century no longer is.
Yeah. That's very fascinating things you've raised there, Lynn, and I need to practice what I preach. Where one of my favourite songs that we play to the girls all the time, I tell them it's our family theme song. The chorus goes, "Do what you want to do, be what you want to be," and so I always need to remind myself that the thing I love the most is hearing people's different stories, but then gathering together and breaking bread in spite of our differences.
Yes.
I don't know why I sit here sometimes and get frustrated when my whole goal is to do that, to just accept people as they are.
Yeah.
And
you're a passionate person, Peter, and don't lose that.
Yeah,
You'll keep young and vital and vigorous while you're passionate.
Yeah.
And that's some of the saddest things, to look at men and women who were so passionate once for the Adventist church, and it's not there anymore, and they're almost empty shells.
Yeah.
And it can get you down. It can make you emotionally and physically and psychologically ill. Because we buy into our Christian walk probably even more than Roman Catholics do.
Yeah.
When you think about it, they've got their rituals.
Yeah.
But we've got our traditional doctrines and the Sabbath and we've got this, and it becomes ritualistic.
Yeah.
And Des Ford taught us to put Christ at the center. Now, was it only him? Well, He's the one that I remember anyway, more than anybody else. But, you know, then you remember Trevor Lloyd getting on board with amazing chapels that he took. Noel Clapham was a big influence. Georgie was solid theology all the way through, you know, and put it all together, and they were golden years.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, we'll let you finish with that quote that you were talking about.
All right. Okay, here we go. 1999, this was published. It's a secular Jew, Andrew de Blanco, out of Columbia University, and the title is "The Real American Dream: A Meditation on Hope." In the prologue, the premise of this book is that human beings need to organize the rudimentary sensations amid which we pass our days into a story. When that story leads somewhere, it gives us hope. And if such a sustaining narrative establishes itself over time in the minds of a substantial number of people, we call it culture. And right now, that's what's under attack here in the US. And there's an anthropologist that he turns to who actually says, if you don't have this hope, you end up with a kind, and this is quoting, a kind of formless monster with neither sense of direction nor power of self-control, a chaos of spasmodic impulses and vague emotions. Now, just continuing on just a few seconds more, we must imagine some end to life that transcends our own tiny allotments of days and hours if we are to keep busy, if we are to keep at bay, quote, the dim, back of the mind suspicion that one may be adrift in an absurd world. And the name of that suspicion is melancholy. So his book is a book on meditation to find hope. And he looks at three things: God, self, and nation. Now, it's an American book. There's something to that.
Yeah, boy. That's
Meditation of hope is what we all need.
Yeah, hope
through the gospel.
Yeah, hope can give you life meaning and purpose. And like, sorry, you just cut off there, and hope, you find hope within the gospel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now that I haven't got Des Ford, I turn to Tim Keller for it. He's become my pastor.
Dr. Lynn Bartlett, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. It'll be ongoing. We'll have you back again, and please dip into the comments of as people have been writing away there and enjoying the interview very much.
Okay.
And just a quick plug, we're in about 20 minutes time. We'll be interviewing Stephen Ferguson. He's a lawyer and author from Perth, Australia, and he's written a couple of very interesting articles on Glacier View, and I'm looking forward to chatting with him.
I've read some of them. I've enjoyed these writing.
Yeah, and just a quick plug, if you cannot support me financially, go onto Spotify and listen to the recording I did for my little girl to help her sleep at night. It's called Sleep Baby Sleep, and just put it on at night on loop, and I get 0.012 of a cent every time you play it.
Well,
So,
better than nothing, but you're not going to get rich on that.
No, that's right.
Yeah, but Peter, just a word of commendation. What you're doing is significant, and you and I are going to talk, but Arthur, Patrick, Des and Jill and myself were going to do a video a number of years ago, and I told you before we started, that's when I had the time and but not the money, and then later on I had the money but not the time, and you're doing it. This is archival stuff, and there's got to be a way to actually package this and market it. So God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Lynn, and I look forward to talking to you more about that. Thank you. Thanks for being part of this.
You're welcome.
Talk soon.
Good night, everybody.
And there we go, an epic conversation with Dr. Lynn Bartlett.
Very good.
Very interesting. And if you heard me saying in 20 minutes it's Steve Ferguson, no, but that will be next week as I replay these incredible programs. As he said there in the end, they are archival, and season 2 now no longer available on Facebook at all. They've all gone now, Gillian, I'm pretty sure. So what I lament the most is most of them had up to 1,000 comments on each video in Facebook there, and they've all gone too. There was just, in my mind, were added to the resource that people would be able to look back, join the group, and just look at the videos and read the comments, and they've all gone as well. So we're rebuilding, and we're putting them all out on YouTube now. And that was season 2, episode 29 with Dr. Lynn Bartlett. And it's a replay of our 2020 season. So we're going to just bring Gillian in here to share some thoughts, some commentary on what you heard there. Did it remind you of other things? Over to you, Gillian.
Well, one thing I thought of, this meeting where they decided that they might lose 70,000. This wasn't done by any great study or anything, because Hamill said this to me on the Friday evening when I said to him, if you fire Des, a lot of people will leave. And he said, we've already calculated, because in the time of Kellogg, we lost 7,000. And Ellen White had sort of said when, what do they call it? The Alpha and the Omega. When the Omega comes, and they published a book a bit afterwards about Omega, and of course it was Des, 10 times as many will leave. So that's how they calculated the 70,000. And I'm glad he said that, because it was also written in Evangelica, probably Hamill. It was a president at Andrews, and he just retired, talking to Alan Crandall. He mentioned the same story. And the Kimes, who started up GNU in California, they talked to Hamill, and he told them the same story. So now it's well and truly established. But that's how they calculated it.
Isn't that interesting?
The Alpha and the Omega.
And Lynn pointed out that that's how political systems, governments operate. You know, it's not really about the people, it's about survival.
You know, Wilson was a very clever man, and I think he was more liberal-minded, not a lot more liberal, but certainly more than Ted.
Yes.
But I don't think there was any intention that Des would ever stay in the church, and particularly since I've done all these books. And, you know, this is volume 10, which is up. It's up on Amazon.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Can you just hold that up again? Everyone go and grab yourself a copy of this book.
Yeah, it's a big book. Sorry about that.
It's really
But
good.
there's a letter in there, and I've talked about it before, from Wilson, which I wrote to him when I got to Washington, D.C. I wrote to him because Des was in trouble. Des, they said, had leaked stuff to Dean Jennings. Dean Jennings had called. Somebody was listening. I know the name of him. Can't think of it at the moment. And so Des got quite a threatening letter from Neil Wilson. So I arrived as this arrives, and I wrote him a reply, and I said, look, Des hasn't told me anything. And I said, if you told him not to leak stuff, he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He hasn't even told me. So remember, on this letter, when I looked at it again, I already published it. I sometimes find out I've already published a letter, but sometimes it's appropriate to different circumstances to publish it twice, and it's not a big letter. But anyway, I noticed there was some writing in the right-hand margin, and that it was Neil Wilson's writing, because I have his signature. So I checked with David Trim to find out, was it his writing? And he passed it around to some people. Yes, it was. So I typed it out, and you remember it turned out to be an outline for how he would discipline Des 7 months later. Now, this is before Des has written the Glacier View manuscript. He's only just started researching, because it's about the end of January in 1980. So already Neil Wilson's worked out how he's going to fire him. And, you know, I've put together the church's documentation. We know that, and also personal interviews with people that I've put with a long hold on them in the archives, or I will do it. of people who witness stuff, like the nephew of George Burnside. Parmenter goes to talk to him just before Glacier View, and he tells him that Des is not going to survive Glacier View. And then Athol Tolhurst said it to one of the administrators at church. And I've done a lot of that history, but it's all sort of recorded in these books.
Yeah.
But that's a very, very key letter.
Yeah.
Because it's
Confirms
a document
it,
that
sort of.
Wilson, for some reason, has written on his copy of my letter. And actually, David Trim had sent it to me because I was looking for a specific letter that Bert Holoviak sent me. And I thought it was this one. And it turned out to be a different letter. And if you look at it, somebody said to me, it looks as though it's been doctored, but I didn't doctor it. The copies, the originals at Washington, D.C., and I've got the statement from David Trim saying, yes, it is his handwriting. And then I've put in the notes from Bob Spangler wrote down notes during the Friday afternoon meeting at Glacier View, and the same outline that he's got on the letter 7 months before. He follows it. See, I remembered it because I was there. I remember Wilson starting off and flattering Des, and then he says, but you've got poor judgment. And he goes through the list that's on that letter. So when you get a letter like that, that's gold, absolute gold.
So confirmative, because sometimes you just know that you're being played and there's something political going on, but to have that kind of evidence is amazing.
And then, of course, at Dallas, Neil Wilson is sitting next to his dad. Now, I've seen a document where it says that he was sitting, and I can't. Some of the old spectrums you can't get hold of, but I think it was an article by Larry Geraghty. But I do have evidence that Herb Douglas said he gave a prayer. So Neil Wilson's dad, who was moved out of Australia in 1951 for being a slightly naughty boy, not a terribly naughty boy, but he did resign. He becomes the Michigan State Conference president, and he's sitting with Wilson at Dallas, and they're working out how they're going to deal with Des. And by a fortuitous providence on their behalf, the 18 months before the actual Dallas statement, remember Dallas was in April 1980, and for 18 months before that, they've been working on the 27 fundamentals, which later became 28. And number 3 is the one on the sanctuary. So that's where they decide that they're going to use that statement to make up the 10-point statement. So remember that you have the consensus statement that the groups work in every day. They come up, and Bill Johnson and Fritz Guy put that up together. But then there's this other statement, the 10-point statement, and this is 10 points comparing Des's manuscript with Dallas statement number 23. So you really don't need a Glacier View. You don't need a meeting to work this out. So they get 6 people in the group. They tell them they want to help the administrators. This is the excuse that Neil Wilson gives them. Norm Young was one of them. The administrators don't know what's going on theologically, so they want to give them a statement to show where Des differs from the Dallas statement. But behind the scenes, they don't bother with the consensus on the Friday afternoon. They use a 10-point statement. And Des says to them, because it was half a page, I remember Des reading it. He said, give it to me, I'll read it. I'll read through it. It'll take less time, because they were reading it out. And he said, but there's no biblical evidence. And, I've told you all this story, how Spangler says, well, by the time it's published in the ministry, it will have the evidence in it. And when it comes out, it's about 2.5 pages. But what was presented to Des was just one, these points. And Des actually agreed with it, except for the first one, which basically said he was a poor scholar. And that evidence came from Arthur Furch. But Des said to me,
that stuff.
Des said to me, the putting together of the manuscript, it was done very fast. And you had Dallas, all the secretaries away. He had trouble getting anybody to work on it. And I don't remember this, but I was in Washington, of course, after January. And he said I spent hundreds of hours, volunteered. I didn't get paid for it. We didn't ask for any money for it. And I went to Glacier View, and all these years I've thought that Neil Wilson paid for me to go, but it turns out that Des and I paid for me and Luke to go. But anyway, I've always thought very nicely of Neil Wilson for doing.
And then you found out, no, it was you guys that paid.
Yeah, we paid. And then they were sorry
Wow.
because, because I wept. Now, one story behind that, which won't be of much interest, but I'd been on estrogen from the age of 29 because I had terrible PMS from going off the pill. And it was really extreme. So I went on estrogen and walked into the light. It was wonderful. And that started me off helping other women who had problems with hormones. But when I got to Washington, D.C., I went to a doctor and she said, you've got to come off estrogen. So they just took me off. I won't go into the details. And what that did was I immediately started having panic attacks.
Wow.
So there are photos of me with Des, on the cover of the first two books. And I'm holding my mouth because my face is shaking. That was because of going off estrogen. And that was the reason I cried so much, I think.
Wow.
Because I wasn't crying for me and Des. I was crying for the church because of the loss of the gospel. I mean, the reason for doing all these books is not to defend Des, because I don't think Des needs it, but in the hope that the church will come right about the gospel.
Well, Lynn pointed out there, didn't he? He said if the gospel had been the focus of Glacier View, it would have been a different outcome.
Well, it really was, because the investigative judgment was anti-gospel. That's why Des went. It wasn't to do with the investigative judgment. It was because it had caused so much angst, especially among the older people. So, yeah. Anyway, I've sort of got off what Lynn was talking about, but he did a wonderful job.
Yeah, and just a quick plug for Lynn's book while I remember too. A Boy from Handorf. I'm sharing the Spectrum book review there, which is good. But if you just type into your Amazon account and just type in A Boy from Handorf, Handorf, and by Lynn Bartlett, you'll find it, and it's a really good read. And Handorf, have you been there? It's an absolutely amazing place.
I've actually got that review in volume 10 because
good.
When I wrote about Lou, when I got, it's a small world, but there are 3 articles in here about Lou Weir. And then I told Lynn, because I write to Lynn a fair bit, he's very helpful, very good on the Reformation. So he's one of my advisors in doing these books. So I put that in because he wrote that little piece that he said on the program about Mrs. Weir when he told her that her books were being sold at Andrews. So I was going to say something else about that.
So she had some books available.
What Mrs. Weir? No. Larendale got permission to republish them. So they had quite a thing going at Andrews. Yeah.
Just that reminded me of, I'll just bring it up on the screen. Just people might think I'm having too many groups going, but there's basically SDAQ&A, and then there's a YouTube channel for highlights, a YouTube channel just for season 2, and a YouTube channel for our Good News Fellowship each week. But the thumbnail there, that's a bit hard to read, but it came from the interview I did last week with Dr. Richard Coffin, and he was recounting a story there, and I could have probably So hard to fit the info you want in a thumbnail, but it says, Dead Ford is wrong, wrong, wrong. Get him out of here. And that was, I think at the start
I
of the
thought it
week
was
of the
just
meetings.
I looked at that in the middle of the night. It's not the best time for me. And I thought, well, this is so you can go on and have a go at Des.
Yeah, no. It's
And
the
when I went on it, it was a very good
yeah,
connection.
because SDAQ&A Highlights is a channel that I've started for people who don't have long attention spans and they just want to watch maybe 10 to 20 minutes of the interviews. And if their interest is piqued, I have the links for the full interview. But I will get better at making the thumbnails more obviously accurate. But the point is, this was confirming that it was a kangaroo court. Before the week had started, this guy in Richard Coffin's small group said, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting all this money? We already know that Des is wrong, wrong, wrong. Just get him out of here. Before even
And see
looking at the material.
the leaders in charge of the small groups, they were chosen. I mean, sort of like Irwin Gain was in there and Herb Douglas, because they had 3 people over each group. And I think there are about 14 groups, but they were vice presidents. So it's very much controlled from the top down. The amazing thing is that they came out and Des could accept the consensus.
Yeah.
So Bill Johnson did a good job because both sides thought it
Yeah.
supported them.
And again, that confirms that Neil, Athol, Keith had already decided well before. This is the line in the sand. Pearson, get rid of Des. And even so, when it looked like, the consensus document or statement was going to be, maybe Des is going to stay, they're all agreeing with it, including Des. That's why they had to wheel out the 10-point statement to try and
remember that we talked about this recently. We've done about 5 programs on this book.
Fantastic.
And John Rosier has
so well
read it.
Yeah.
But the point of doing all that work, and it keeps on, I've got that letter from AFJ Kranz, which we read out, which is an absolute corker.
Amazing.
And I have put it in this book. I don't know whether it's...
That says it all, that letter. And when was that dated? Do you remember
1983. And see, he was in New Zealand when Grieve got put out, when RA Grieve got put out. A lot of people won't know who he was, but he was the president of Queensland and the president of North New Zealand in trouble through Clifford. But I mean, I went through all that before. But the thing is, lay people don't realise that this problem with the investigative judgment has been a problem for a long time. And you remember last week, didn't we look at that photograph? Did we actually put up the photograph, or we haven't got to it yet? That Gilbert used in his talk about C.H. Watson. So in 1956, which is 30 years after Watson was the General Conference president, the only Australian. At the seminary in 1956, which was the same time that Grieve was put out, 7 of the professors at the seminary in Washington, D.C., Gilbert saying they had trouble with the investigative judgment.
Yeah,
either they didn't believe it, or they
look
said...
at that picture. Yes, we did.
We did look at that picture.
Yeah.
And then he looks at Heppenstall and he said, well, Heppenstall progressed and he nuanced the doctrine. But I wrote to a couple of letters to Gilbert. Poor old Gilbert gets it in the neck from me, because Heppenstall, what he did was, and we talked about the 4 different errors. First of all, 1844 as the date of Christ's coming. Well, that obviously didn't happen. So the next one is the shut door, that he's actually coming 7 years later. Probation is closed for the world in 1844, and Jesus is coming back, but not for a few years. But meanwhile, probation is closed for the world. So anybody who doesn't accept Adventism is lost. And Ellen White, remember Frank Belden publishing the original, right? So we don't have to go over that again.
Yeah. No, it's good.
So then we get number 3 is the investigative judgment, which actually came from a man called Elon Everts. Have we got? You have to tell me what the time is because I know you've got to go.
We've got another 10 minutes.
Okay. So he comes up with the original idea. James White takes it over. It's not till 1851 when they need a new interpretation that it comes in. So Ellen White goes along with it. The pioneers teach it. She's got it in great controversy, but it's wrong. It's biblically wrong. And we talked about you can easily debunk it. But the main thing and the reason that Des went to Glacier View, it's anti-gospel.
Yeah.
Because, you've got 2 phases, an incomplete atonement, and then in 1844, the saints go under judgment, and God is looking at the saints. So the Heppenstall comes along in the 50s, and he says, oh, no, it's not about looking at the sins of the saints. And, of course, until Gilbert did this didn't click with Jill. Exactly what he said. He comes up with an opposite theory that actually it's us vindicating God. It's not God looking at our sins. It's us questioning God. And a number of people took this on, and I've got stuff on that which we can look at later. And I may have done it slightly before. So here you've got 4 wrong theories. And the church after Glacier View, they did the DAQ&A series, and I've said this before. Niels Erik Andreasen was on that committee, and they said we've got to soften the doctrine of the investigative judgment. So they come up with this idea of the pre-Advent, and you've got last generation theology, where a group of people at the end of time are going to keep the law perfectly and thus vindicate God. So they take up Heppenstall's idea, but he wouldn't have believed in last generation theology.
No.
So, and this is where the church is. And when I see Lloyd Grolleman saying, oh, well, we've, now we've all got these new and improved ideas, it's not true. You've got the old stuff that's been going on since the 1950s, sort of polished up a bit after Glacier View in the DAQ&A series, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
The doctrine is not wrong. And you're just, because we focused on the end and judgment and the second coming, we missed out on the first coming. So we never properly understood the Pauline gospel.
Yeah.
And I'm getting towards this in this book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got the problem with the right wing, which is Wesleyan sanctification. And then the next article is about where Bob Brins meets at today. And he's throwing out Pauline Christology.
Yeah.
So that's your liberal side of the church, moral influence people.
Yeah.
I could name names on all of this.
I've often said to you, and it's been a long journey, the 5 years and really looking back at these is really tying it all in a nice bow in many ways. But I've said all along that there's something there about the Adventist version of the gospel that has never had a chance to really see the light of day. And I'm looking forward to our chat that we will have in the next week or two with John Rosier, because I want to discuss with him his article that he wrote called What Adventism Could Have Been. And he, of all people, along with yourself, actually do grasp what it could have been. And I'm hoping to kind of make that one of my last conversations where I say to Adventists, look, you're on your own now, but I've done a lot to try and cajole you into defining this gem that I want to have you and John share what Adventism could have been, and I think it'll be a really great manifesto for them.
On the side, I've been doing series of slides about all this stuff because, what has happened with me, I keep getting this stuff. I got the Cran's letter, and then I got from the family, R.A. Grieve, I got a bibliography, which adds to what I've done. So, this little book, Bye keeps getting bigger. But it's sort of, you can see that this problem has come up over and over
Yeah.
and over again. Now, Froome told Wilson, and as a sort of a sinecure, Wilson said to Des that Froome told him, we've got trouble with our sanctuary doctrine. Now, the scholars have known this, and, you know, Fritz Guy, most of the scholars, I've actually, in here, I think it is, I've got an introduction. David Thiel asked me to do, now I can't remember which one it is, but I said, you need to read what I've written because I'm getting more and more focused on this stuff. And I said, you've got to make sure, I said, it won't be a test of friendship, but if you don't want to be in the book, I'll understand it. And in this one, I think it's this one, I've got an introduction where I name all the people in different groups that I know who don't believe in the investigative judgment. And there were 28 at Glacier View that I know about, but probably there's others. So this is a problem. And that was, I've told you, Doug Hackelman's book on Cottrell, the family of Cottrell. So there's three of them, the grandfather, the father, and Cottrell. And he's done the first one. And the grandfather, Cottrell, worked with Ellen White and James White and Uriah Smith. So what you see, when I first read it in 2012, you got to see Des was just a Johnny come lately. You know, he could express it. He'd done more work on it than anybody else in the church. But right through from the beginning, you've got all these names. And remember that Mrs. Vowlis, whose big issue was about her husband got more into things like the investigative judgment and so on. She's got a list of 66 people she knew who had left the church. Some of them over Ellen White, but some of them over the investigative judgment. So it's a big issue. The church has covered it up. I talked to you about the light bearers and the candle snuffers. So Des wasn't, it was time. Bob Brinsmead had just come out on 1844, and he said to me, Bob has got to be answered. And then, of course, he gets asked to do the forum, and we know all that history. So the great thing about this book, which is Des's first thesis done in 1960-61, it's about the Apostle Paul. So the first chapter, which yours truly is doing the index. I'm just doing an index on the first chapter. But the first chapter is on the history behind Paul, how God created a climate, the Greek civilization, the Roman civilization, the dispersion of the Jews. And it was like a nest that produced the time for the man Paul to come. So it's come providentially. I didn't plan to do this. This is because David Thiel visited me just after I'd done volume 10 in the other book and said, to do the thesis. Now, he meant this one, but I started on that one. So I thought, oh, well, I'll do them both. And so I'm trying to break this down in case I do volume 11 to show you the importance of Paul and how Paul understood the gospel. And the Jews at Jerusalem, they opposed him. Not all of them, but they opposed him. So we've got it wrong, And when you look at I've told you about the Wesley thing, which we'll go over again because it's in volume 10. But Wesley, I've told you, because he was an Anglican and his parents were Anglican and his brothers, they all read the Catholic medieval scholars. And so he had an era of sanctification. Now, the Adventist Church, they never talk about it. You don't see them doing PhDs on it or anything. But it's a significant problem because he was Catholic in his views about sanctification by grace. This is how we get the problem with perfectionism in the church.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem. Now, where was I going on that? Anyway, we've probably got to finish.
We'll wrap it up.
But
But
they're good observations.
it's all
And
coming together.
yeah, I guess that
Because
was my point before. There's a real sense of the last 5 years for both of us has been an incredible journey. And it feels like we're both reaching this point of, like all those strings are being tied now. It's for others to come along and unpack untie the bow and look at the content and put it together.
nobody's going to listen to me, and I'm an old woman, but somewhere down the line, somebody will do something with it,
Yeah, I
maybe.
think, yeah.
But anyway, the fact that Gilbert has just done 4 slide programs on C.H. Watson, of course, the timing of it, he's working on the period 1931. Well, in Australia, he was there 1926 to 1930. And then he goes to America, and it sort of saves the church because he's a businessman after the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same time as Monica Vowles. So I
Right.
think to myself, I've got to get hold of this because there's something in there for me. And the thing that was in there that was striking was this picture of 7 faculty members back in 1956. Now, Neil Wilson had people taught to him. Fred Veltman taught to him, said he stood where Des did. Bill Johnson fudged a bit. Jack Provencher said, I agree with Des on the investigative judgment, but not justification by faith. And who was the other one? Jim Cox. He went and talked to him personally. Wilson knew this was a problem, and he chose to shut it down. So I don't completely, Wilson was very charming. He was pretty nice to me. You couldn't help but be impressed by him because he was a diplomat. He'd been in Egypt, and Des said he learned his diplomacy from working in Egypt. But, there was never any question of Des staying in the church. And you've got to remember that Des, he took it so well. And one thing that I want to read you in this book, and I'll stop here, is that interview that suddenly turned up with Harry Ballas, which started me off on this book when I had nothing else. He's talking, by this time, Harry is a professor at Monash, so he's talking in a different way than he would when he was a student. And he's saying, Harry, I haven't just read it, so sort of off the top of my head. Harry's saying to him, aren't you upset with the men for the way they treat me? He said, absolutely not. He said, all the rubbish ideas in religion, and he talks about, he said, most of it's wrong. And he talks about when he was in class, he'd say to the students, half of what I'm teaching is wrong, but I don't know which half. So he said, how can I get upset with them? Wonderful attitude. God-given, wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
Anyway, I better shut up.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Andy Mack says, I'm so grateful for all the work Gillian is doing and has done. All the bad stuff Adventism has done is now harder to cover up. And
I've certainly spilt the beans. They just don't know about it yet. Can't answer it. It's all their stuff.
Yeah, exactly. This is the best
That's
recap.
so wonderful.
This is the best recap. Thanks, Gillian. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. I think I've got an interview tomorrow with Grenville Kent. Come and join us for that. Next week, did you say John Rosie is back around, Gillian, or is that going to be the week
ready,
after?
and Jonathan Butler says he'll be back.
So I'm going to talk to Jonathan Butler and try and get him on Wednesday. Yes, you do. And I'm trying to get Andy Mack, who's watching, on the Thursday to chat about what she just spoke in the comments.
Now, one thing I wanted to...
Maybe Thursday afternoon, if we can.
That's next week?
John, next week.
Well, I'll try and give him a
time. I'll check the time differences. And
now, remember that Adventists today are going to put on this Adventist, this Reclaiming the Prophet program. That's going to be live. They got money to do that. That's on November the 8th. Okay. And I've asked John Butler to come on. He'll come on and talk about his chapter, but I'm sure it'll be broader than that.
I'll try and get him next week as well. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Gillian. We'll see you next time we have another one of these replays if you're free. And we'll have another commentary and discussion. Always enjoy it, Gillian. Till next
you.
time. See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.